Yes, yes, yes. Yes, yes, yes. I hear there's something happening tonight. Something that has to do with the election. I don't know. Uh Comment section. Will you guys help me out? What's taking place tonight? Oh man. Of course. It is the one. The only, well, I guess the one of two. The presidential debate. Kong Kong. All right. We've got Joe in the house, Maple Lane in the house. What's up, guys? We've got I've got my TV up on the screen here. We are all set and ready to party. Let's see if anybody's got any interviews or something going down. Rachel Maddow just had Josh Shapiro on. Let's see what the crew over. What's up, Lenny? Let's see what the crew over at MSNBC has for us.
What do you make of these rules and logistics and how the campaigns are viewing them as advantages or disadvantages?
Look, this may make me unpopular up here, but I don't think anyone that the Harris campaign is interested in talking to tonight gives a damn about any of this, right? They are talking tonight, and the momentum that she has achieved in the most extraordinarily successful, I mean, we compare her candidacy to Obama's, but President Obama had months and months to get to where she got in days and days. So what she has to build, this incredibly successful movement candidacy, what she gets to do tonight is to take that sort of political special sauce that she and only she has ever done in American politics and present it to the largest TV audience. That's it. Nobody watching that she cares about politically and statistically gives a damn about the rules. And for whatever the rules are, dumb, not dumb, fair, not fair, they agreed to them. So she's not the victim of any of the rules. Yeah. She agreed to them. She's there tonight. So the rules are what the rules are. But what her really miracle campaign needs to do tonight is to leave all of this to us, right? Leave this to cable chatter and go grab the voters that still haven't, seen a rally or don't know who she is, or maybe have heard some of those lies. Maybe they heard she's a radical San Francisco liberal, and she needs to stand there and do what Liz Cheney said was deliver a speech that George W. Bush could have given, or Ronald Reagan, which is probably so far the largest TV audience that has seen her. But if you saw her that night and you see her tonight, and she gives again what Liz Cheney said was a speech that Ronald Reagan could have given, you won't believe the lies. And so this is interesting, endlessly, ceaselessly interesting to us. And I actually have an even more radical view than you. I think they should ask one question. Who won 2020? And if they can't get Trump to tell the truth or answer, I don't think they should go any further.
Stay on it.
Stay on it. But your attorney general said that was bullshit. But Chris Krebs said it. I mean, I actually have an even more radical view than you do on the rules, but I'm not sure that helps Kamala Harris sustain the momentum.
This is what Chris Hayes was saying earlier in our coverage, saying that what Harris needs to do, needs to calibrate correctly, is the relationship between how much time she spends even acknowledging there's somebody else on the stage and how much time she spends speaking through the camera to people at home who are watching her, who are trying to figure out whether or not they want to vote for her.
And it's a very difficult thing to calibrate.
So Rachel's got a really good point there. And that's kind of what everybody is kind of on pins and needles for is, okay, so is this going to be just another Joe Biden versus Donald Trump? And it's going to be like one of those, oh my gosh, Kamala totally blew it? Or is this going to be, she's going to go straight for Donald Trump's jugular and take him out right away and just destroy him throughout the entire thing? And how is she going to balance, going for Trump's jugular, but also talking to, Americans who want to know more about her public policy and her platform? And I think Kamala is such an amazing, candidate, person, prosecutor, that she is going to very quickly go for the jugular of Donald Trump. Almost every time she's asked a question, she's going to hit him, and then immediately, she's going to hit him hard. And then she's going to immediately just turn to the American public and be like, okay, now that I've, addressed the bully in the room, now that I've addressed the guy who doesn't really have any policy ideas, now let me tell you what I'm going to do for you, right? And it'll be that kind of it'll be great because Kamala will be able to look as though she's defending us from, Trump's radical Project 2025 and his the biggest deportation in the history of the country, and it's going to be bloody, just bullshit ideas like that, right? So she's going to look like the defender against Trump, and then she's also going to look like she's got the American public's back because she's going to be presenting ideas for them. Affordable housing, increasing access to healthcare, the child tax credit, all these things that she's going to rely on, convincing the American public that she's the one that they should vote for.
Oh, okay, right, because
while this is paused, I know we'll get back to it. While this is paused, I just want to say a quick what's up to everybody. I am so excited for tonight. I truly think that Kamala has, a little bit of what Wallace was saying there. Nicole Wallace was saying how, she's already led this amazing campaign and she's only done it in weeks, a month and a half, whatever. If they were racing and they were in the the Indy 500, right? And Joe Biden and Donald Trump were neck and neck, and Biden, he bows out of the race, and then all of a sudden Kamala Harris just pulls up right next to Donald Trump, and they're still battling for the lead. I think tonight is the night that Kamala steps on the gas and puts Donald Trump in the rearview mirror. Do want to say hello to everyone. Lenny, Maple Lane, Joe, TJ Combo's in the house. Old Soul, I see you. We've got comments coming through on Facebook and on YouTube. Christine Campbell, I see your comments over on Facebook. Welcome, everyone. I am so thrilled. I know you guys are too. I think I'm not nervous at all about Kamala's performance. I know that she is going to let's put it in kind of terms that she would like. She's going to cook him. She is going to saute his ass. It is going to be a night to remember. I'm so thrilled that we're all watching together. Let's tune back into MSNBC. It looks like they're just kind of hanging out. It's 5:20. We've got about another 40 minutes before the debate takes place. Let's check in. Let's see. I can just kind of quickly browse through here. I do want to check in on Fox News to see how they're handling this. The delusions that they're spreading. I think they are very quickly going to realize that this race is over after tonight, and I think it might get a little crazy for them. Maybe, in the initial aftermath of the debate, but I think, give them a week and I think they're just going to realize that it's over. Let's see. Laura Ingraham on Fox News. I think this is just her show. Nah, we don't want that. Let's go here. All right. We'll just check back in with the MSNBC crew. See how they're doing.
The human being. So he's going to say things that are luridly false to Lawrence's point. I mean, not just lies, but lies that are, libelous, right? Like lies that are like disgusting. Lies are the kind of things that
welcome
are that you would get you kicked off of social media platforms once upon a time. So we'll say things like that. And the question about how you respond or not. I also do think there's two parts to debate. There's the fact that she's going to have more people she can talk to than any other audience she's going to probably ever have.
Hold on. I see a lot of people praising Old Soul, but I don't have YouTube up. Old Soul, did you just go ham and did you just donate a bunch of members again? Oh my goodness, everybody. Chat, give it up for Old Soul. Oh man. Oh, Old Soul coming through again. This is the third time that Old Soul has come through. Christine Kronk, you get a membership. Sean Ring of Doom, you get a membership. Oh man, they're all coming up on the screen. Awesome.
And there is, to your point, Lawrence, about the post-debate narrative chewing. And we do know that one of the things that does happen is that does matter a lot, right? Because there's what people see, and then there's the discussion afterwards, and the knock-on effects, and the clips on TikTok, and all that sort of thing. And to your point, Lawrence, I really do think, like, this is where the asymmetry is at its most intense and egregious, right? If Kamala Harris yesterday had posted identically what Donald Trump did on Twitter, it would literally be the only story in America today. I don't even think there's a question about that. It would be a front page story of the New York Times. It would lead all the networks. It would be everything. Kamala Harris calls to prosecute and jail donor. What?
Right.
But it's
the New York Times would literally cancel every other opinion piece they had planned for the rest of the week and have everybody write on that, all condemning it.
And so there is just this unavoidable asymmetry. And maybe it's avoidable if depending on the press, but that will also be part. There's two stages here. There's Kamala Harris addressing the American people, and there's the way that this debate gets digested in that sort of broader way.
We have to take one last break before we're getting into the debate tonight. I want to remind you that you can watch the whole debate right here, plus our analysis thereafter. California Governor Gavin Newsom is going to be joining us from Philadelphia right after we squeeze in this very quick break. Governor Newsom with Alex Wagner just ahead. We'll be right back.
Anita, I see you. Welcome. Let's see what else. I mean, these guys have the best analysis of. Oh, here we go. Gavin's on.
This outdated DMV has two forms of ID.
We can speed this up a little bit. We're a little behind.
The successes.
There we go. Let's get to Gavin.
A month. Go to selectquote.com now and get the
price. Economy coming. He'll
doesn't have to overpay.
Right, I'll mute this while I jump ahead. Oh man, they are milking these commercials. Woo. Belinda, my teenage kids are actually excited to see this debate. Yeah. There was this great moment where Kamala went into a spice shop in Pittsburgh just a few days ago, and she spoke to three different women. And I'll make a video about this, but three different women. It was a middle-aged woman who was crying. She was terrified of another Trump term. It was another young woman who was a recent law school graduate who was working in consumer protections, and then I want to say a middle schooler who just looked up to Kamala. And these three women represented the biggest threat to the GOP, Donald Trump and MAGA, right? Or these four women, including Kamala. It was the woman who is terrified and she is motivated to vote. It was the next generation of fighters and the consumer protection lawyer, and then it was the next generation, the middle schooler who's going to follow in all of their footsteps. It's a great moment, and it looks like YouTube TV is a little. Let's check on Twitter here. Maybe I can bring up that clip while I'm talking about it. Let's see here. Rainn Wilson from The Office. He's got a message. Don't know what he's talking about. Let's see. Like I said, it was a few days ago, so let's see if I can jump down to it. But I definitely have it here. Right. Oh my goodness. Guilfoyle's speech the other day was a nightmare. Yeah, here we go. Let's watch a few minutes of Kamala at the spice shop. Yeah, first off, do you hear that reaction to her just coming in the shop? You know, Fox News is talking all this nonsense about how, you know, the shine of Kamala Harris is really worn off. Right, like, oh, she's, you know, not as many people are excited about her anymore. Oh, that sounds like people are still excited.
is that about?
I think you understand. I'm pretty sure you know.
Oh, it's gonna be good. We're gonna be good. We're gonna be fine. We're gonna be fine. We are all in this together.
Yes, we are.
We're gonna be fine.
We are.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are.
Thank you so much.
Huh?
Thank you
Yeah.
so
Did you get some spices?
Oh, absolutely. I'm not a best person.
Oh, it's all good. It's all good. We're standing strong, right? We love our country. Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's right. Who's this? This is a relative of yours,
No,
or just a new friend?
Just a new friend.
Hi. I'm
a lawyer in Pittsburgh here, and I just admire your
you.
work so much.
Good. What kind of law you practice?
Consumer protection.
Good for you.
I'm protecting consumers.
Good for you. You know, that's the work I did as AG.
Yes,
That's good
yes,
stuff.
yes.
That's
Can I
really
please
good.
go?
Of course. Come on. Let's do it. Come on.
Oh my God, I'm shaking. Someone take it. I did not get it. Can someone take it for me, please?
Who are the yellow jackets? Come here.
They're my school.
They're your school? What school is that?
Freeport.
Freeport? What's your name?
Charlotte.
Nice to meet you, Charlotte. I'm Kamala. Are you cooking also? What are you doing here? Or did you bring an adult with you? Or are you just hanging out?
Hi. How are you?
Can I have a hug?
Yes, come here. Of course. Aw. How's school going? Has it started?
Great.
Yeah?
Uh-huh.
It's going well?
Yeah.
What's your teacher's name?
My homeroom teacher is Mr. Gaylord.
Mr. Gala? Okay, will you deliver a message to your teacher? And you're going to have to say the Vice President asked me to deliver this message. Okay, here's the message. Thank you for being a teacher. Will you do that for me? Okay, high five. There we go. Ah, you're good. You're a leader already. Come on. Yes, come on. Here.
This way. Got it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
You keep doing your work. You're doing really good. That's good work.
Charlotte, right here. Can I get a picture?
Yes, sweetheart. Come on.
Okay, here's the picture.
Got the parents in there.
Oh,
Come on, parents.
Thank you.
Hi.
Thank you so much.
Hi. We're doing it together. He's a teacher.
Yes.
You are a
Yes,
teacher?
yes,
What level?
7th grade geography.
Oh,
social
bless
studies.
you.
Yes.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
And you know Tim Walsh talked
Yes,
about
yes.
this.
Oh yeah, that's great.
Yes.
Yeah.
Come on, let's
Yeah,
take a
okay,
family
okay.
picture. Come.
Look right
come.
here. Thank everyone right this way.
This is awesome. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Oh, that dad's laugh was pretty funny. He nearly hyperventilated talking to her. But yeah, like Maple Lane said there, the conversation just flows, no awkward moments. Yeah, that's Kamala Harris, right? The candidate for the people. She's so natural. She is she just gets in touch with the humanity of these people. You know, she can console that woman and also lift her up right away. She can encourage that lawyer, and then she can inspire the young middle schooler. It's just it's so refreshing to have someone like this in the race that we know they're going to give us moments like this and inspire the 320 million of us for the next 8 years. Super excited, and it really begins tonight. Let's check back with YouTube TV here. Let's see what's going on. Why this is a little
question
Okay.
that she's up for the challenge.
All right. So Gavin's talking. I'm gonna bring us back to the beginning of this.
In the spin
interview
room tonight
here.
in Philadelphia,
There we go.
among the very high-profile supporters and elected Democrats who are there on behalf of Kamala Harris, is our next guest, California Governor Gavin Newsom, who is standing by right now in Philly with Alex Wagner. Over to you, Alex.
Thanks, Rachel. I just want everybody at home to know, for Truth in Journalism, I'm on a booster seat right now. There's no way I'm even approaching the governor's
set up
site.
even more then.
Yeah, thanks for that.
That's right.
Governor, I think we all remember at the convention, you took Vice President Harris over the top and officially nominated her on the floor. It was an exciting moment for California. I know you have a long history with the Vice President. Can you talk a little bit about how, what your expectations are for tonight from someone who's on the biggest stage, arguably of her political life, but has been, making the argument for a while?
Well, I mean, in the frame of expectations, and I don't want to overstate, but I don't want to understate, I have great expectations because I've seen her up close. I've been at those debates that people have seen game tape on, they've seen videos on. I was in the room. I've seen her underestimated, particularly, dare I say, with men.
Yeah.
I've seen her capacity to get under their skin. I've seen her capacity, and forgive me, this is not just a rote and cliche thing to say, prosecute the case, whatever that case may be, both against the candidate, but also prosecute the case for the future. So I think we're going to see both and tonight. I think she's going to be tough. I don't think she's going to sit back and take it from Trump. I think she's going to give plenty, but I also think she's going to be talking about you. She's going to be talking about me, the people watching at home.
You know, you bring up the sort of gender piece of this, which I think is worth talking a little bit about, because in the last debate that you and I both attended, which was featured President Biden and Donald Trump, Trump was kind of self-contained to a large degree. I mean, he was still saying rambling, incoherent, you know, spreading disinformation, but he was not as aggressively mendacious as he has been.
Because he didn't need to be. He didn't need to be. He had someone, he had a different person on the other side.
Yeah.
And if President Biden took it to him, he's thin-skinned. He's weakness masquerading as strength. And this is a fragile guy. He's a broken person. I mean, really is. And as a consequence of that, he's incredibly vulnerable to reverting to who he really is, which is someone that doesn't necessarily feel worthy and is trying to overcompensate. And I think that's easily exploited. He's easily manipulated, and he's easy and prone to get off message. And I think that's why I think she has the opportunity to be particularly effective tonight, because I don't think she's going to be timid. I don't think she's going to overdo it, but I think she will take that prosecutorial mindset. And I'll tell you what, Kamala Harris will show up tonight, not Kamala. I think this is also about dignity. It's also about respect, and she's going to demand it on stage. And if he doesn't provide it, he may regret that.
Yeah, it feels like because she's a woman, because she's a person of color, she triggers Trump in a way that Biden didn't necessarily. And Trump's ability to control himself, we are already hearing from his campaign, maybe in question tonight. I do wonder, when you say you're confident that she's going to bring her prosecutorial A game. One of the things that's been successful for her in previous debates and previous moments is her ability to be naturally herself and to laugh at things that are worth laughing at, or to have sort of natural human reactions to things. How much do you expect humor to be a tool she deploys again?
Yeah, really quickly before Gavin gets to this point, and he's saying a lot of the same things that I was saying at the beginning of this stream. Have we seen a moment where Kamala is flustered or isn't natural? I mean, I know we talked about that video, and we talked about her great instincts with people and how she could talk to both, young and old and everyone in between. But like, I don't really think I've ever seen an awkward moment from Kamala. I don't know. Something to think about.
Well, I know we've talked a lot about that, and I've seen a lot. I mean, people ask, what is about Kamala Harris that most people don't know that you know going back decades and decades? Is her humor? Is her wit? Is the joy you're now seeing? I saw her a few weeks ago at a fundraiser. I said, this joy is back. It's the old Kamala. There's a lightness to her. And so I think she can still bring that as she brings it to Donald Trump and then pivots to, again, prosecute the case for the future. Because here's the differentiator. People say, well, how can she be the change candidate? She is change. She's not Joe Biden, and she sure as hell is not Donald Trump. But she can focus on the future because she represents the next generation, a new generation. But that's, again, prosecuting the case for a future where everyone feels seen and everyone feels included.
You know, that's a lot to do, right? Humor, natural reactions, prosecuting. You're someone who is a habitué, can I say that, of Newsmax and Fox.
Yes,
you are unafraid of going, to the other side, Earth 2, as we like to call it, on MSNBC. How do you pick and choose which pieces of disinformation, which trolls to respond to in a format where, there's a healthy back and forth?
Well, I think when you're demeaning other people, when you're attacking vulnerable communities, when you're being a bully, I think that's when you stand up. And I think that's about character. That's about values. And I think anytime it reflects in that space, where you're attacking the LGBTQ community, where you're attacking minority communities, where you're attacking immigrants, you're talking down or past people, standing up tall and asserting yourself and pushing back, I think that has universal traits. We all want to be loved. We all need to be loved. We all want to be respected. We all want to be protected. We all want to be connected to something larger than ourselves. If she can bring that universality to this and defend the defenseless, boy, she walks away with this debate.
Let me ask you one last one in terms of just how we should be thinking about this debate, because I think belatedly we're having this national conversation about sane-washing Donald Trump. The fact that this man has been rambling incoherently, irresponsibly for months, if not years, but it's been especially acute in recent weeks. And I think we're finally having this dialogue about how do you not normalize, or how do you not trend towards coherence when you're talking about what Trump just said? How do you accurately sort of explain to the American public the mendacity, the incoherence, the irresponsibility, the aggression in a way that accurately reflects the tone and tenor of a person that is increasingly unhinged?
He's not only unhinged, but he's derivative of himself. I find him incredibly...
Wait, what does that mean, derivative of himself?
He's boring. I may get in trouble, particularly with this audience. 5 or 6 years ago, you'd tune in, maybe for the train wreck, the clown show, but there was some entertainment value. I mean, you've been watching some of his speeches. It's monotone. He's boring across the board. Even in his audiences, you see people paying attention not to the speech, to themselves, walking out early.
Looking at their clocks.
He's lost his step. And what happened, look, what I think will happen tonight, I expect, if she's successful, he'll start off that old Trump, perhaps in that last debate, and try to be the new Trump. Again, he's the one guy universally graded on the curve. He's, in his little pity party, he's the victim. He's always been the victim. But there'll be a point where he gets off his game. These are 2 minutes. That's a long period of time. 2 minutes, 2 minutes.
2 minute answers.
The 1 minute follow-up, he's incapable of not taking the bait. And she's very capable of not taking the bait. She's extraordinarily disciplined, particularly in an environment like this. Again, look back in her one-on-one debates. Consistently, back decades and decades. This is where she shows up and shines. All that said, I'm not naive. This guy doesn't play by the rules, which means then he has more options in a debate. And when someone has more options, he's a more challenging person to debate. So I'm not suggesting this is not only high stakes, this is a huge challenge, but I have all the confidence, back to your opening question, that she's up for the challenge.
All right, Governor Gavin Newsom, it is great to hear perspective, some words of wisdom as we head into a consequential night in American politics. Back to you, Rachel.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Alex. Thank you, Governor. Troy, on that last point that he just made, and he said he may lose people in our audience by saying it, but he essentially said, that Trump is derivative of himself. Alex got him to clarify that by that he means he's boring. He says Trump used to be, even in his political life, more entertaining, but now he's so self-referential that he actually can't hold a tune. Like he can't tell a good joke. He can't follow a story through to the end. He can't make a point. He's constantly referring back to some tangential or self-referential thing in a way that loses people. And he's describing that as a weakness that Trump won't be able to sort of resist falling into, particularly as the night goes on.
Yeah, and I think it's always important to remember.
Both Rachel and Gavin Newsom there, because Donald Trump is so boring and because he's tangential, as Rachel put it there, that's why we see the flood of memes on Facebook and on Twitter and all over, the truth socials, because that's the only way that they can communicate let's just call it what it is. It's their racism. Let's look at the latest. There was a tweet from Nancy Mace about this whole, protecting the cats and the ducks, like this right here, right? Like what Eric Swalwell said today in the judiciary hearing. Let's see if Ron, I think he tweeted this image that shows Donald Trump. Yeah, here you go. This is because Donald Trump he doesn't make any sense anymore. But he stands for it's white, ignorant America, right? It's the racists who are still pissed that Barack Obama was elected president. Because they can't rally around any ideas, right? Because Donald Trump in his own head can't vocalize these ideas, can't stay on track. They have to communicate like this. And so they use memes that are just clearly racist, right? Just clear, flat out racism. It's a meme based on a lie about Haitian immigrants eating cats and ducks. And so, of course, it's Donald Trump running from a crowd of seemingly Haitian immigrants with a cat and a duck. Just racism, right? And so that's where we are now. That's Donald Trump is tangential like that. He can't stay on track. And so MAGA and the cult is kind of they're steering off the cliff, right? And tonight, back to the racing kind of metaphor I was talking about, right? How Kamala has pulled head to head with Donald Trump and she's going to leave him in the rearview mirror. Donald Trump's running his car off a cliff. He is about to hit the guardrail. Or maybe he's already hit the guardrail. Let's just be clear about that. He's already hit the guardrail. The two wheels are off the cliff. He's just got the back two wheels, and those back two wheels, the only thing keeping him on that road are memes like this. This is how they communicate. But this is basically the end of it. We'll see this for another 2 months, memes like this, and they'll probably get more and more racist, right? The meme about Kamala Harris and Hillary Clinton getting to their positions by performing sex acts, like that kind of stuff is what we're going to see more and more, because it's the only thing tying these people together, right? Tying the ignorant MAGA cult together. It's their racism and their misogyny. And that is not going to get you far in an election. Let's get back to...
Remember,
MSNBC.
this Donald Trump is 4 years older than the Trump that debated Hillary Clinton. And he's older yet than the person who was on The Apprentice, who could read, when the producers would tell him who to fire, he could do that. He could perform that. Yeah. But to
8
Nicole,
years older than Clinton when he was debating Clinton.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
8 years older. Sorry, 8 years older. Sorry. You're right. Time is a myth. Nicole makes this point a lot. His act is so stale that Fox doesn't even really cover him live anymore. It's very rare that they take him, because I think they've even started to realize it's unhelpful to their preferred candidate to show him. And the more that you actually watch him, which is why, we all debate whether to show him. We do show him sometimes, because you watch it and what you really see is a decrepit mind. You see a person who is declining. He is the oldest person ever to run for president, and it is clear that he is in some form of cognitive decline. And he keeps referring back to things that make him comfortable. Hannibal Lecter, the movie that he went to the premiere for, the second version of. He goes to places that are bizarre, which he calls the weave. But I think, to take it back to what Lauren said, and I think to what Nicole said too, this is the reason that this debate is so artificial and so, in some ways, built in a nonsensical way. Because they are sane-washing him in real time by muting his microphone and not showing you what Trump is really like, which is the way he is at his rallies. What they're doing is presenting an artificially cleaned-up version of Donald Trump. And so I think for Vice President Harris, she really can't think about him. Like, I think about the way she responded to Dana Bash when, God bless Dana, she asked that absurd question about her race, making her defend her racial identity. And she said, same old thing, next thing. And it was such a brilliant way to just dismiss something stupid. I think she does need to correct things like the tariffs and explain, what a tariff is, I think, if that comes up. But I think all she has to do, I will just reiterate what I said before, this is a 90-minute TV show for Vice President Harris to present herself to the small number of people who are watching, who want to vote, who are not non-voters, but who, for whatever reason, have not gone from Biden to her, from Indy to her, or from not voting to her. Treat it like a TV show, and that's your audience.
Lawrence,
how do you get those people to vote?
Yeah, look, you have to think about Donald Trump as a TV show, because he is, okay? It's in its 9th year. This is the 9th year of the series. There's no TV series in history that was better in its 9th year than its 4th year or its 1st year, okay? Never. And audience fatigue sets in on most TV series before they ever get to 9, okay? And you're lucky if you're fading out at 7. And so he is stretching this TV series now into its 9th year with no new episodes. It's the same script from the pilot, from the first episode.
The problem, though, is that the sort of product tie-ins are a lot more lethal, right? Like, there's not a toy in the cereal box. There's a loaded gun at our democracy. I mean, the problem is that the saturation of the TV show is into the most extreme elements of our politics. And I think that you know, Chris Christie has an op-ed out tonight, and he makes some good points, having prepped Trump 30 times and having debated him himself, that Harris seems to have already incorporated in her presentation to this really important swath of voters. And I would add to your list, she should go for two-time Trump voters who have had enough of the TV show. Yeah. I mean, I think there are a lot of them.
How do you get those, Nicole?
Well, I think you put Dick Cheney on a bus with Bernie Sanders and send him to Erie, PA, and then if they can be in the bus together that long, take them to the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, and then maybe drive them, or maybe ask Josh Shapiro where he deployed all the Republicans who endorsed him. Josh Shapiro ran a coalition candidacy. That's how he destroyed Doug Mastriano. She now has a coalition of support, and I think if you know David Plouffe, and we all do from being on TV, he's going to make sure she takes this TV audience and communicates about things they care about, the cost of everything, housing, school, education, groceries, everything. But I think in terms of sort of the political building blocks that she has to work with, she will do all this. And to your point about the filter we put on this, we can't sit here and say, did she speak to the kitchen table issues? Did she fact check him because the moderators refused to? All she has to do is I think what the governor said. I mean, if you look at how she dismantled Brett Kavanaugh and Jeff Sessions and Bill Barr, it wasn't by saying, Brett Kavanaugh, you've never backed a law that controls a man's body. It was by saying, Mr. Kavanaugh, do you know of any laws that govern what a man can do to his body? I'm sorry, what? I don't understand the question. I'll repeat it. Do you know about, I mean, she's very good at asking questions that reveal everything about men that are a million times smarter than Donald Trump will ever be.
While Kamala Harris is in Philadelphia for tonight's debate, her running mate, Tim Walz, has spent the day campaigning in swing state Arizona. He's expected to attend a debate watch party there in Mesa, Arizona. You're looking live at that venue right now. I can also tell you that after the debate, Democratic Vice President...
We've got about 10 minutes before the debate starts. So let me scrub through this. It looks like we're going to go behind the scenes in here a little bit. MSNBC's got us covered.
Let's go now to NBC News political and national correspondent Jacob Soboroff, famous for being the easiest man to talk to in all of American news. Jacob is watching the debate tonight with a focus group of swing state focus.
Yeah, I do want to point out Chris Below, his comment over on Facebook. Ask yourself why 24 of the 34 cabinet members are not supporting Trump now. They worked for him, and it worked for him and with him. Use your head, not your feeling, when making important decisions about the future of the country. Man is a scam. Yep. Well said, Chris. So many comments over on YouTube. You guys on YouTube are all just freaking-tastic. All right, let's get back to it.
Focus group in swing state Arizona. He's in Phoenix. Now, Jacob, I understand some of the folks who are there with you tonight talked to us on MSNBC after the first presidential debate as well between Trump and Biden. There's not total overlap with the whole group, but some of those folks are overlap. It's going to be especially interesting to hear from them now.
Yeah, I'm excited to reintroduce everybody to some of those folks, Rachel. And the reason that we're inside, by the way, and Tim Walz will be inside tonight, and the watch parties are inside, is it is 107 degrees right now in Phoenix, Arizona. They've had some ridiculous stretch of over 100-degree temperatures in Arizona. So our friends at 12 News here in Phoenix, our NBC partner and the affiliate here, have been nice enough to invite us inside. 12 News has also been following the race here very closely, not just because Maricopa County, obviously Phoenix, where we are, is the largest swing jurisdiction in the entire nation with 4.5 million voters. This state, Arizona, was decided by only 11,000. But because the candidates have been here
that
they
I'm
make
gonna jump ahead
about
to.
the questions to ask him, and hopefully it just won't be framing things he said about Vice President Harris as questions for her and for him to expound upon.
We're just a few minutes out from the start of the debate. Nicole, I understand you have a special guest standing by in the spin room.
Yeah, we are really lucky to have someone that we all have grown to turn to in times like this. Joining us now from the debate spin room in Philadelphia is Illinois Senator Tammy Duckworth. It is so essential that you are there, and I wonder how strongly you feel or what your thoughts are about the cacophony of voices, specifically speaking to Trump's lack of fitness to lead the military after his stunt at Arlington and after his pretty public displays of disregard for the men and women of the military.
Well, it's clear, we've always known that this is a 5-time draft dodger. I gave him the nickname Cadet Bone Spurs, and yet he continues to insult our military families. He's insulted Gold Star families, and yet he still wants to be Commander-in-Chief of our military. And by the way, during his last administration, when he was in office last, he actually changed the rules at Arlington National Cemetery so that he could be buried there, even though he's never served as in the United States military. It's really shameful. And now you see that he has no respect for our warriors. He has no respect for our veterans, and using the sacred grounds of Arlington for a campaign commercial. I mean, there's no low to which this man will not.
Okay, so just on that note, chat, where would you bury Donald Trump if you had the power to decide that? Where are you sending his casket?
Senator, yesterday, 11 generals issued a letter really impugning his ability to serve as commander-in-chief. Dick Cheney and Liz Cheney, who probably don't agree with Democrats. Maybe by this point they do, but traditionally they have not. But on questions of the Constitution, on U.S. national security, on protecting our Constitution, they are enthusiastic supporters of Vice President Kamala Harris. How do you make sure that a broad coalition of Americans recognizes that Vice President Harris has a broad and ideologically diverse ring of support, specifically around her credentials and her leadership on national security issues?
I think you're going to see more and more people step forward to talk about the need to maintain that support, and you're going to see people, diverse voices, Republican voices coming forward. You're seeing that here tonight. There are many people here. There's a group of retired generals who are here already talking about their support for her and how unfit Trump really is to be commander-in-chief. Remember, this is a guy who incited and attempted to overthrow the United States government because he lost an election. And really, I hope that tonight Kamala speaks directly to the American people and reassures them that she will be the candidate, the president, who will respect and protect and defend the Constitution of the United States. So an oath of office that the president of the United States takes, but obviously Trump as president did not live up to that oath of office. But you're going to see more and more people step forward, and it's not just going to be the high-profile individuals. You're going to see everyday Americans step forward. Our rank-and-file troops in the military also stepping forward to say that they truly, would rather have Kamala be the commander-in-chief than a Donald Trump.
Yeah, it's a theme that's really emerged every day since the convention. Senator Tammy Duckworth, thank you very much for.
Okay, so a lot of people want to see Trump in the trash bin. Few of you said the toilet. Landfill, trash can, toilet. Joe Ritz, man, love it. Unmarked grave, nothing special, nothing crazy. I wouldn't tell anyone where he was buried. Yeah, don't give him the martyr option, right? Just put him out in the middle of nowhere, out in the middle of New Mexico. I was thinking, maybe just kind of launch his, I don't even want him like on the world, involved in the world anymore. Just launch him into space in a random direction. Yeah. So, okay, we are 3 minutes away. Let's check back in on.
For taking some time to talk to us, Rachel.
On MSNBC.
Thanks, Nicole. And thank you, Senator. Let's bring back in Alex Wagner. She's in the spin room in Philly with our colleague, former U.S. Senator Claire McCaskill. Alex.
Thanks, Rachel. You guys get to have pizza in New York and hang out together, but I get to have Philadelphia hoagies and hang out with Claire McCaskill, so I think I win. It's great to see you.
Thank you.
I wonder, there's a lot to talk about in terms of Kamala Harris, but you are a woman who also served in the prosecutor's office. And I wonder, as you think about Kamala Harris's history as a prosecutor, what you think the advantages of that kind of experience are and what the potential pratfalls are in a debate setting.
I don't think there's any pratfalls. I mean, you have to understand, when you're in a courtroom as a prosecutor, there is no script. You know what you want to elicit from your witnesses. You know the points you want to make on cross-examination. But you don't know what the witnesses are going to say. You don't know how the judge is going to rule on motions. You have to learn to think on your feet. It is an incredible training ground for debate. I watched her. It was so funny because we served on a committee together. Yeah. And I'd watch her cross-examine witnesses. And then she'd watch me cross-examine witnesses. And then we'd do the fist bump back. Hey, we got it right. So listen, I think she's got this tonight. And I guess I'm just somebody who doesn't believe Trump is going to be anything other than Trump.
Yeah.
I mean, he's had plenty of opportunity to be disciplined, to clean up his act, to quit insulting people, to quit being a jerk, time after time, and he just can't help himself. He thinks that's why people like him, because he says things that you're not supposed to say.
Right.
So I just don't see him being the kind of candidate tonight that is going to reassure America he's the guy, and it is an old episode and it is tired. And on the other hand, I think she's going to show people she's ready.
It's a sort of strange choreography, right? Because there's clearly the polling shows that people want to know more about her and where she stands. But at the same time, the sort of broad wisdom is that if this election is about Donald Trump, she wins. And it seems like one of the devices she has used thus far in her career to great efficacy is questioning. Right? Like whether it's a Senate confirmation hearing or whether it's, in a debate setting, she can, as Nicole points out, get across a point without actually stating something, but instead posing it as a question.
Yeah. Okay. They're getting down into the legal weeds of how she's going to attack. Now, it is 6 p.m. So 6 p.m. on the West Coast here. It is 6 o'clock. So I'm going to jump over to ABC here, and so that we can get
it's all
every
gonna be happening
second
right here,
of the debate.
The debate now just 10 seconds away, and we will be back with our post-game show as soon as it's over. We are going to toss it right now to David.
Tonight, the high-stakes showdown here in Philadelphia between Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump. Their first face-to-face meeting in this presidential election, their first face-to-face meeting ever.
A historic race for president upended just weeks ago. President Biden withdrawing after his last debate. Donald Trump now up against a new opponent.
The candidates separated by the smallest of margins, essentially tied in the polls nationally and in the key battlegrounds, including right here in Pennsylvania, all still very much in play. The ABC News presidential debate starts right now.
This is an ABC News special, the most consequential moment of this campaign. Kamala Harris.
Together, we will chart a new way forward.
Donald Trump.
We will soon be a great nation again.
Face to face, historic. The ABC News presidential debate. Here now, David Muir and Lindsay Davis.
Good evening, I'm David Muir, and thank you for joining us for tonight's ABC News presidential debate. We want to welcome viewers watching on ABC and around the world tonight. Vice President Kamala Harris and President Donald Trump are just moments away from taking the stage in this unprecedented race for president.
And I'm Lindsay Davis. Tonight's meeting could be the most consequential event of their campaigns, with Election Day now less than 2 months away. For Vice President Kamala Harris, this is her first debate since President Biden withdrew from the race on July 21st. Of course, that decision followed his debate against President Donald Trump in June. Since then, this race has taken on an entirely new dynamic.
And that brings us to the rules of tonight's debate. 90 minutes with 2 commercial breaks. No topics or questions have been shared with the campaigns. The candidates will have 2 minutes to answer questions, and this is the clock. That's what they'll be seeing. 2 minutes for rebuttals and 1 minute for follow-ups, clarifications, or responses. Their microphones will only be turned on when it's their turn to speak. No pre-written notes allowed. There is no audience here tonight in this hall at the National Constitution Center. This is an intimate setting for 2 candidates who have never met.
President Trump won the coin toss. He chose to deliver the final closing statement of the evening. Vice President Harris selected the podium to the right.
So let's now welcome the candidates to the stage. Vice President Kamala Harris and President Donald Trump.
Kamala Harris. Let's have a good debate.
Nice to see you. Have fun.
Thank you.
Welcome to you both. It's wonderful to have you. It's an honor to have you
Shook
both
his
here
hand.
tonight.
Good evening. We are looking forward to a spirited and thoughtful debate.
So let's get started. I want to begin tonight with the issue that voters repeatedly say is their #1 issue, and that is the economy and the cost of living in this country. Vice President Harris, you and President Trump were elected 4 years ago, and your opponent on the stage here tonight often asks his supporters, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? When it comes to the economy, do you believe Americans are better off than they were 4 years ago?
So I was raised as a middle-class kid, and I am actually the only person on this stage who has a plan that is about lifting up the middle class and working people of America. I believe in the ambition, the aspirations, the dreams of the American people. And that is why I imagine and have actually a plan to build what I call an opportunity economy. Because here's the thing. We know that we have a shortage of homes and housing, and the cost of housing is too expensive for far too many people. We know that young families need support to raise their children, and I intend on extending a tax cut for those families of $6,000, which is the largest child tax credit that we have given in a long time, so that those young families can afford to buy a crib, buy a car seat, buy clothes for their children. My passion, one of them, is small businesses. My mother raised my sister and me, but there was a woman who helped raise us. We call her our second mother. She was a small business owner. I love our small businesses. My plan is to give a $50,000 tax deduction to start up small businesses, knowing they are part of the backbone of America's economy. My opponent, on the other hand, his plan is to do what he has done before, which is to provide a tax cut for billionaires and big corporations, which will result in $5 trillion to America's deficit. My opponent has a plan that I call the Trump's sales tax, which would be a 20% tax on everyday goods that you rely on to get through the month. Economists have said that Trump sales tax would actually result for middle-class families in about $4,000 more a year because of his policies and his ideas about what should be the backs of middle-class people paying for tax cuts for billionaires.
President Trump, I'll give you 2 minutes.
First of all, I have no sales tax. That's an incorrect statement. She knows that. We're doing tariffs on other countries. Other countries are going to finally, after 75 years, pay us back for all that we've done for the world. And the tariff will be substantial in some cases. I took in billions and billions of dollars, as you know, from China. In fact, they never took the tariff off because there was so much money they can't. It would totally destroy everything that they've set out to do. They're taking in billions of dollars from China and other places. They've left the tariffs on. When I had it, I had tariffs, and yet I had no inflation. Look, we've had a terrible economy because inflation which is really known as a country buster. It breaks up countries. We have inflation like very few people have ever seen before, probably the worst in our nation's history. We were at 21%, but that's being generous because many things are 50, 60, 70, and 80% higher than they were just a few years ago. This has been a disaster for people, for the middle class, but for every class. On top of that, we have millions of people pouring into our country from prisons and jails, from mental institutions and insane asylums, and they're coming in and they're taking jobs that are occupied right now by African Americans and Hispanics, and also unions. Unions are going to be affected very soon. And you see what's happening. You see what's happening with towns throughout the United States. You look at Springfield, Ohio. You look at Aurora in Colorado. They are taking over the towns. They're taking over buildings. They're going in violently. These are the people that she and Biden led into our country, and they're destroying our country. They're dangerous. They're at the highest level of criminality, and we have to get them out. We have to get them out fast. I created one of the greatest economies in the history of our country. I'll do it again and even better.
We are.
Okay, so he's all over the place. We knew he was going to do this, right? It's slippery dawn. It's no, I don't have a sales tax, and I had the greatest economy. Just forget about COVID. No inflation. No, that's incorrect. COVID led us to the insane inflation numbers that we're experiencing. I mean, he is all over the place, and that of course he's just going to slide in immigration, make up stories about immigrants taking over these towns, just back to his good old race baiting and trying to divide.
We are going to get to immigration and border security during this debate, but I would like to let Vice President Harris respond on the economy here.
Well, I would love to. Let's talk about what Donald Trump left us. Donald Trump left us the worst unemployment since the Great Depression. Donald Trump left us the worst public health epidemic in a century. Donald Trump left us the worst attack on our democracy since the Civil War. And what we have done is clean up Donald Trump's mess.
Boom.
What we have done and what I intend to do is build on what we know are the aspirations and the hopes of the American people. But I'm going to tell you all in this debate tonight, you're going to hear from the same old tired playbook, a bunch of lies, grievances, and name-calling. What you're going to hear tonight is a detailed and dangerous plan called Project 2025 that the former president intends on implementing if he were elected again. I believe very strongly that the American people want a president who understands the importance of bringing us together, knowing we have so much more in common than what separates us. And I pledge to you to be a president for all Americans.
Boom. Just forecast what he's about to do, right? This isn't going to be a surprise, right? He's going to go out, he's going to name call, he's going to lie. That's what he does. Just sets him up for, every answer he's going to give from here on out. People are going to be looking at him with just skepticism.
President Trump will give you a minute here to respond.
Number one, I have nothing to do, as you know, and as she knows better than anyone, I have nothing to do with Project 2025. That's out there. I haven't read it. I don't want to read it purposely. I'm not going to read it. This was a group of people that got together. They came up with some ideas, I guess some good, some bad, but it makes no difference. I have nothing to do. Everybody knows I'm an open book. Everybody knows what I'm going to do. Cut taxes very substantially and create a great economy like I did before. We had the greatest economy. We got hit with a pandemic, and the pandemic was not since 1917, where 100 million people died, has there been anything like it. We did a phenomenal job with the pandemic. We handed them over a country where the economy and where the stock market was higher than it was before the pandemic came in. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. We made ventilators for the entire world. We got gowns, we got masks, we did things that nobody thought possible. And people give me credit for rebuilding the military. They give me credit for a lot of things, but not enough credit for the great job we did with the pandemic. But the only jobs they got were bounce back jobs. These were jobs bounce back, and it bounced back and it went to their benefit. But I was the one that created them. They know it, and so does everybody else.
Vice President Harris, I'll let you respond.
So Donald Trump has no plan for you. And when you look at his economic plan, it's all about tax breaks for the richest people. I am offering what I describe as an opportunity economy, and the best economists in our country, if not the world, have reviewed our relative plans for the future of America. What Goldman Sachs has said is that Donald Trump's plan would make the economy worse, mine would strengthen the economy. What the Wharton School has said is Donald Trump's plan would actually explode the deficit. 16 Nobel laureates have described his economic plan as something that would increase inflation and by the middle of next year would invite a recession. You just have to look at where we are and where we stand on the issues. And I'd invite you to know that Donald Trump actually has no plan for you because he is more interested in defending himself than he is in looking out for you.
Okay. Boom. And also Donald just looking there like a high schooler who's being scolded. Oh yeah, I mean, I know I don't have a plan. Yeah, Janine Turner, I see you in the comments. Wharton School is his alma mater. Kamala she's telling a lot with her eyes. When she brought up the Wharton School, she shot him a look like, hey buddy, even your alma mater doesn't believe in you. Donald Trump's economic policy is promise tax cuts to everyone. That's all he's got. Middle class. Yeah, I'm gonna cut your taxes. Oh, are you? How are you gonna pay for that? Corporate America, I'm gonna cut your taxes. Are you? How are you gonna pay for that? Oh, well, the top 1% earners, I'm going to cut your taxes too. Wait, so Donald, you're going to cut everyone's taxes and everyone's just going to live in this dream America that, oh, you're the only one, Donald, in the history of our country who was just like, yeah, everybody gets tax cuts and we're just all big one happy family. Donald Trump, of course, not only has no policy, his policy is promise everything to everyone.
It's just a soundbite. They gave her that to say. Look, I went to the Wharton School of Finance, and many of those professors, the top professors, think my plan is a brilliant plan. It's a great plan. It's a plan that's going to bring up our worth, our value as a country. It's going to make people want to be able to go and work.
Cite one.
Create jobs and create a lot of...
Cite one. Give us one source, Donald. Kamala just brought sources. Give us one of these amazing economists.
Good, solid money for our country. And just to finish off, she doesn't have a plan. She copied Biden's plan, and it's like 4 sentences, like run, spot, run. 4 sentences that are just, oh, we'll try and lower taxes. She doesn't have a plan. Take a look at her plan. She doesn't have a plan.
Mr. President, I do want to drill down on something you both brought up. The Vice President brought up your tariffs. You responded, and let's drill down on this because your plan is what she calls is essentially a national sales tax. Your proposal calls for tariffs, as you pointed out here, on foreign imports across the board. You recently said that you might double your plan, imposing tariffs up to 20% on goods coming into this country. As you know, many economists say that with tariffs at that level, costs are then passed on to the consumer. Vice President Harris has argued it'll mean higher prices on gas, food, clothing, medication, arguing it costs the typical family nearly $4,000 a year. Do you believe Americans can afford higher prices because of tariffs?
They're not going to have higher prices. What's going to have and who's going to have higher prices is China and all of the countries that have been ripping us off for years. I was the only president ever. China was paying us hundreds of billions of dollars, and so were other countries. And, if she doesn't like them, they should have gone out and they should have immediately cut the tariffs. But those tariffs are there 3.5 years now under their administration. We are going to take in billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars. I had no inflation, virtually no inflation. They had the highest inflation perhaps in the history of our country because I've never seen a worse period of time. People can't go out and buy cereal or bacon or eggs or anything else. The people of our country are absolutely dying with what they've done. They've destroyed the economy. And all you have to do is look at a poll. The polls say 80 and 85 and even 90% that the Trump economy was great, that their economy was terrible.
Vice President Harris, I do want to ask for your response, and you heard what the president said there, because the Biden administration did keep a number of the Trump tariffs in place. So how do you respond?
Well, let's be clear that the Trump administration resulted in a trade deficit, one of the highest we've ever seen in the history of America. He invited trade wars. You want to talk about his deal with China? What he ended up doing is under Donald Trump's presidency, he ended up selling American chips to China to help them improve and modernize their military, basically sold us out, when a policy about China should be in making sure the United States of America wins the competition for the 21st century, which means focusing on the details of what that requires, focusing on relationships with our allies, focusing on investing in American-based technology so that we win the race on AI, on quantum computing, focusing on what we need to do to support America's workforce so that we don't end up having on the short end of the stick in terms of workers' rights. But what Donald Trump did, let's talk about this, with COVID, is he actually thanked President Xi for what he did during COVID. Look at his tweet. Thank you, President Xi, exclamation point, when we know that Xi was responsible for lacking and not giving us transparency about the origins of COVID.
President Trump, I'll let you respond.
First of all, they bought their chips from Taiwan. We hardly make chips anymore because of philosophies like they have and policies like they have. I don't say her because she has no policy. Everything that she believed 3 years ago and 4 years ago is out the window. She's going to my philosophy now. In fact, I was going to send her a MAGA hat. She's gone to my philosophy. But if she ever got elected, she'd change
Donald
it.
Trump practiced that one.
It will be the end of our country. She's a Marxist. Everybody knows she's a Marxist. Her father's a Marxist professor in economics, and he taught her well. But when you look at what she's done to our country, and when you look at these millions and millions of people that are pouring into our country monthly, where it's, I believe, 21 million people, not the 15 that people say, and I think it's a lot higher than the 21. That's bigger than New York State pouring in. And just look at what they're doing to our country. They're criminals. Many of these people coming in are criminals, and that's bad for our country.
Okay, so every damn answer is going to be about immigration. Ugh, pathetic.
Economy, too. You know, you mentioned before, we'll talk about immigration later. Well, bad immigration is the worst thing that can happen to our economy. They have, and she has, destroyed our country with policy that's insane. Almost policy that you'd say they have to hate our country.
President Trump, thank you. Lindsay?
I want to turn to the issue of abortion. President Trump, you've often touted that you were able to kill Roe v. Wade. Last year, you said that you were proud to be the most pro-life president in American history. Then last month, you said that your administration would be great for women and their reproductive rights. In your home state of Florida, you surprised many with regard to your 6-week abortion ban because you initially had said that it was too short. And you said, quote, I'm going to be voting that we need more than 6 weeks. But then the very next day, you reversed course and said you would vote to support the 6-week ban. Vice President Harris says that women shouldn't trust you on the issue of abortion because you've changed your position so many times. Therefore, why should they trust you?
Well, the reason I'm doing that vote is because the plan is, as you know, the vote is, they have abortion in the 9th month. They even have, and you can look at the governor of West Virginia, the previous governor of West Virginia, not the current governor, who's doing an excellent job, but the governor before, he said the baby will be born and we will decide what to do with the baby. In other words, we'll execute the baby. And that's why I did that, because that predominates, because they're radical. The Democrats are radical in that. And her vice presidential pick, which I think was a horrible pick, by the way, for our country, because he is really out of it. But her vice presidential pick says abortion in the 9th month is absolutely fine. He also says execution after birth. It's execution, no longer abortion, because the baby is born, is okay. And that's not okay with me, hence the vote. But what I did is something for 52 years. They've been trying to get Roe v. Wade into the states. And through the genius and heart and strength of 6 Supreme Court justices, we were able to do that. Now, I believe in the exceptions for rape, incest, and life of the mother. I believe strongly in it. Ronald Reagan did also. 85% of Republicans do. Exceptions. Very important. But we were able to get it, and now states are voting on it. And for the first time, you're going to see, look, this is an issue that's torn our country apart for 52 years. Every legal scholar, every Democrat, every Republican, liberal, conservative, they all wanted this issue to be brought back to the states where the people could vote. And that's what happened. Now, Ohio, the vote was somewhat liberal. Kansas, the vote was somewhat liberal, much more liberal than people would have thought. But each individual state is voting. It's the vote of the people now. It's not tied up in the federal government. I did a great service in doing it. It took courage to do it. And the Supreme Court had great courage in doing it. And I give tremendous credit to those 6 justices.
There is no state in this country where it is legal to kill a baby after it's born. Madam Vice President, I want to get your response to President Trump.
Well, as I said, you're going to hear a bunch of lies, and that's not actually a surprising fact. Let's understand how we got here. Donald Trump hand-selected 3 members of the United States Supreme Court with the intention that they would undo the protections of Roe v. Wade. And they did exactly as he intended. And now in over 20 states, there are Trump abortion bans, which make it criminal for a doctor or nurse to provide health care. In one state, it provides prison for life. Trump abortion bans that make no exception even for rape and incest, which understand what that means. A survivor of a crime, a violation to their body, does not have the right to make a decision about what happens to their body next. That is immoral. And one does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree. The government, and Donald Trump certainly, should not be telling a woman what to do with her body. I have talked with women around our country. You want to talk about this is what people wanted? Pregnant women who want to carry a pregnancy to term, suffering from a miscarriage, being denied care in an emergency room because the healthcare providers are afraid they might go to jail, and she's bleeding out in a car in the parking lot. She didn't want that. Her husband didn't want that. A 12 or 13-year-old survivor of incest being forced to carry a pregnancy to term. They don't want that. And I pledge to you, when Congress passes a bill to put back in place the protections of Roe v. Wade, as President of the United States, I will proudly sign it into law. But understand, if Donald Trump were to be reelected, he will sign a national abortion ban. Understand, in his Project 2025, there would be a national abortion, a monitor that would be monitoring your pregnancies, your miscarriages. I think the American people believe that certain freedoms, in particular the freedom to make decisions about one's own body, should not be made by the government.
Thank you.
Okay, we are only a half an hour into the debate, and that right there is possibly the moment that won Kamala the election. Look, Donald, you want to lie? You want to bullshit us about how everybody wanted you to send it back to the States. Yeah, tell that to the 13-year-old girl who's carrying her rapist's child, or the woman who's sitting there terrified that she's going to die because she's having complications and the doctors are saying, hey, oh, whoa. Look, the sheriff will come for me. Yeah, Donald, you're bullshit. You're bullshit about how everybody wants you to do this, and everybody wanted those Supreme Court justices to strip these women of their protections. It's lies. And Kamala right there, she called him on it. She knew it was coming because Donald is it's the same tricks out of this guy. He has been saying that bullshit about Democrats. They want to kill babies after they're born. He's been saying that at his rallies for years. So Kamala was ready for it, and Kamala just hit him exactly like she could. And you could tell that she's passionate. You could hear that in her voice. That moment is the moment of the debate so far.
Thank you, Vice President Harris.
Well, there she goes again. It's a lie. I'm not signing a ban, and there's no reason to sign a ban because we've gotten what everybody wanted. Democrats, Republicans, and everybody else, and every legal scholar wanted it to be brought back into the states, and the states are voting. And it may take a little time, but for 52 years, this issue has torn our country apart, and they've wanted it back in the states. And I did something that nobody thought was possible. The states are now voting. What she says is an absolute lie. And as far as the abortion ban, no, I'm not in favor of abortion ban, but it doesn't matter because this issue has now been taken over by the states.
Would you veto a national abortion ban if it came to your desk?
Well, I won't have to because, again, two things. Number one, she said she'll go back to Congress. She'll never get the vote. It's impossible for her to get the vote, especially now with the 50-50 and essentially 50-50 in both Senate and the House. She's not going to get the vote. She can't get the vote. She won't even come close to it. So it's just talk. You know what it reminds me of? When they said they're going to get student loans terminated, and it ended up being a total catastrophe. The student loans, and then I think probably her boss, if you call him a boss, he spends all his time on the beach. But look, her boss went out and said, we'll do it again. We'll do it a different way. And he went out, got rejected again by the Supreme Court. So all these students got taunted with this whole thing about this whole idea, and how unfair that would have been. Part of the reason they lost to the millions and millions of people that had to pay off their student loans. They didn't get it for free, but they were saying it's the same way that they talked about that they talk about abortion.
But if I could just get a yes or no, because your running mate, J.D. Vance, has said that you would veto it if it did come to your desk.
Well, I didn't discuss it with J.D. In all fairness, J.D., and I don't mind if he has a certain view, but I think he was speaking for me, but I really didn't. Look, we don't have to discuss it because she'd never be able to get it, just like she couldn't get student loans. They couldn't get student loans. They didn't even come close to getting student loans. They taunted young people and a lot of other people that had loans. They can never get this approved. So it doesn't matter what she says about going to Congress. Well, wonderful. Let's go to Congress, do it. But the fact is that for years they wanted to get it out of Congress and out of the federal government, and we did something that everybody said couldn't be done. And now you have a vote of the people on abortion.
Vice President Harris, want to give you your
Wait a minute, Donald. If everybody said it couldn't be done, I thought you were just saying that everybody wanted it. So in his same breath, it's everybody wanted this to happen, but also everybody said I couldn't get it done. Like, are you kidding me? Make it make sense, Donald. Lenny had a great point. Nobody was talking about it all these years because we believed that for 50 plus years, it was a done deal. During the confirmation hearings with these Supreme Court justices, they were asked specifically about Roe v. Wade, and it's settled law. Going back to Lenny's point, settled law. That's why everybody said it couldn't be done, because it was settled law, Donald. But you and your corrupt Republican and your Heritage Foundation Supreme Court justices, you got done what everybody said you couldn't, but what everybody wanted. Just want to be clear about that, Republicans.
time to respond, but I do want to ask, would you support any restrictions on a woman's right to an abortion?
I absolutely support reinstating the protections of Roe v. Wade. And as you rightly mentioned, nowhere in America is a woman carrying a pregnancy to term and asking for an abortion. That is not happening. It's insulting to the women of America. And understand what has been happening under Donald Trump's abortion bans. Couples who pray and dream of having a family are being denied IVF treatments. What is happening in our country? Working people, working women who are working 1 or 2 jobs, who can barely afford childcare as it is, have to travel to another state to get on a plane sitting next to strangers to go and get the health care she needs. Barely can afford to do it, and what you are putting her through is unconscionable. And the people of America have not, the majority of Americans believe in a woman's right to make decisions about her own body, and that is why in every state where this issue has been on the ballot, in red and blue states both, the people of America have voted for freedom.
Vice President Harris,
Excuse me, I
thank
have to
you.
respond. Another lie. It's another lie. I have been a leader on IVF, which is fertilization. The IVF, I have been a leader. In fact, when they got a very negative decision on IVF from the Alabama courts, I saw the people of Alabama and the legislature 2 days later voted it in. I've been a leader on it. They know that, and everybody else knows it. I have been a leader on fertilization, IVF. And the other thing, you should ask, will she allow abortion in the 8th month, 9th month, 7th month?
Come on.
Okay, would you do that? Why don't you ask her that question?
Why don't you answer the question? Would you
because
veto?
Under Roe v. Wade,
Answer the question, would you veto?
You could do abortions in the 7th month, the 8th month, the 9th
That's
month,
not true.
and probably after birth. Just look at the governor, former governor of Virginia. The governor of Virginia said we put the baby aside and then we determine what we want to do with the baby.
President Trump, thank you.
We're going to turn now to immigration and border security. We know it's an issue that's important to Republicans, Democrats, voters across the board in this country. Vice President Harris, you were tasked by President Biden with getting to the root causes of migration from Central America. We know that illegal border crossings reached a record high in the Biden administration. This past June, President Biden imposed tough new asylum restrictions. We know the numbers since then have dropped significantly. But my question to you tonight is, why did the administration wait until 6 months before the election to act? And would you have done anything differently from President Biden on this?
So I'm the only person on this stage who has prosecuted transnational criminal organizations for the trafficking of guns, drugs, and human beings. And let me say that the United States Congress, including some of the most conservative members of the United States Senate, came up with a border security bill, which I supported. And that bill would have put 1,500 more border agents on the border to help those folks who are working there right now overtime, trying to do their job. It would have allowed us to stem the flow of fentanyl coming into the United States. I know there are so many families watching tonight who have been personally affected by the surge of fentanyl in our country. That bill would have put more resources to allow us to prosecute transnational criminal organizations for trafficking in guns, drugs, and human beings. But you know what happened to that bill? Donald Trump got on the phone, called up some folks in Congress, and said, kill the bill. And you know why? Because he'd prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And understand, this comes at a time where the people of our country actually need a leader who engages in solutions, who actually addresses the problems at hand. But what we have in the former president is someone who would prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And I'll tell you something, he's going to talk about immigration a lot tonight, even when it's not the subject that is being raised. And I'm going to actually do something really unusual, and I'm going to invite you to attend one of Donald Trump's rallies, because it's a really interesting thing to watch. You will see during the course of his rallies, he talks about fictional characters like Hannibal Lecter. He will talk about windmills cause cancer. And what you will also notice is that people start leaving his rallies early out of exhaustion and boredom. And I will tell you, the one thing you will not hear him talk about is you. You will not hear him talk about your needs, your dreams, and your desires. And I'll tell you, I believe you deserve a president who actually puts you first, and I pledge to you that I will.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, on that point, I want to get your response.
Well, I would like to respond.
Let me just ask, though, why did you try to kill that bill, and successfully so, that would have put thousands of additional agents and officers on the border?
First, let me respond as to the
Please.
rallies. She said people start leaving. People don't go to her rallies. There's no reason to go. And the people that do go, she's bussing them in and paying them to be there, and then showing them in a different light. So she can't talk about that. People don't leave my rallies. We have the biggest rallies, the most incredible rallies in the history of politics. That's because people want to take their country back. Our country is being lost. We're a failing nation. And it happened 3.5 years ago.
I didn't know he was going to have to do this.
What's going on here, you're going to end up in World War III, just to go into another subject. What they have done to our country by allowing these
Donald,
millions and
dude.
millions of people to come into our country, and look at what's happening.
Okay. All right. Only Donald Trump can go from I have the biggest rallies to World War III to they're letting all these illegals in. Oh my God, he's losing it.
To the towns all over the United States. And a lot of towns don't want to talk. It's not going to be Aurora or Springfield. A lot of towns don't want to talk about it because they're so embarrassed by it. In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country, and it's a shame. As far as rallies are concerned, as far as the reason they go is they like what I say. They want to bring our country back. They want to make America great again. It's a very simple phrase, make America great again. She's destroying this country, and if she becomes president, this country doesn't have a chance of success. Not only success, we'll end up being Venezuela on steroids.
I just want to clarify here. You bring up Springfield, Ohio, and ABC News did reach out to the city manager there. He told us there have been no credible reports of specific claims of pets being harmed, injured, or abused by individuals within the immigrant community.
Well, I've seen people on television.
Let me just say here, this is the
people on television say my dog was taken and used for food. So maybe he said that, and maybe that's a good thing to say for a city manager.
I'm not taking this from television.
But the people
I'm
on
taking it from
television
the city
saying
manager.
their dog was eaten by the people that went there.
Again, the Springfield city manager says there's no evidence of that. Vice
We'll
President
find
Harris,
out.
I'll let you respond to the rest of what you've heard.
You talk about extreme. This is, I think, one of the reasons why in this election, I actually have the endorsement of 200 Republicans who have formerly worked with President Bush, Mitt Romney, and John McCain including the endorsement of former Vice President Dick Cheney and Congress member Liz Cheney. And if you want to really know the inside track on who the former president is, if he didn't make it clear already, just ask people who have worked with him. His former chief of staff, a 4-star general, has said he has contempt for the Constitution of the United States. His former national security advisor has said he is dangerous and unfit. His former Secretary of Defense has said the nation, the Republic, would never survive another Trump term. And when we listen to this kind of rhetoric, when the issues that affect the American people are not being addressed, I think the choice is clear in this election.
President Trump, I'll give you a quick minute to respond here.
Thank you, because when I hear that, see, I'm a different kind of a person. I fired most of those people. Not so graciously. They did bad things or a bad job. I fired them. They never fired one person. They didn't fire anybody having to do with Afghanistan and the Taliban and the 13 people whose were just killed, viciously and violently killed. And I got to know the parents and the family. They didn't fire. They should have fired all those generals, all those top people, because that was one of the most incompetently handled situations anybody has ever seen. So when somebody does a bad job, I fire him. And you take a guy like Esper. He was no good. I fired him. So he writes a book. Another one writes a book. Because with me, they can write books. With nobody else can they. But they have done such a poor job, and they never fire anybody. Look at the economy. Look at the inflation. They didn't fire any of their economists. They have the same people. That's a good way not to have books written about you. But just to finish, I got more votes than any Republican in history by far. In fact, I got more votes than any president, sitting president, in history by far.
Okay, Donald.
Let me continue on immigration. It was what you wanted to talk about earlier, so let's get back to your deportation proposal that the vice president has reacted to as well. President Trump, you call this the largest domestic deportation operation in the history of our country. You say you would use the National Guard. You say if things get out of control, you'd have no problem using the U.S. military.
Police, yes.
You also said you would use local police. How would you deport 11 million undocumented immigrants? I know you believe that number is much higher. Take us through this. What does this look like? Will authorities be going door to door in this country?
Yeah, it is much higher because of them. They allowed criminals, many, many millions of criminals. They allowed terrorists. They allowed common street criminals. They allowed people to come in, drug dealers, to come into our country. And they're now in the United States and told by their countries like Venezuela, don't ever come back or we're going to kill you. Do you know that crime in Venezuela and crime in countries all over the world is way down? You know why? Because they've taken their criminals off the street and they've given them to her to put into our country. And this will be one of the greatest mistakes in history for them to allow. And I think they probably did it because they think they're going to get votes, but it's not worth it because they're destroying the fabric of our country by what they've done. There's never been anything done like this at all. They've destroyed the fabric of our country. Millions of people let in, and all over the world, crime is down all over the world except here. Crime here is up and through the roof. Despite their fraudulent statements that they made, crime in this country is through the roof. And we have a new form of crime. It's called migrant crime. And it's happening at levels that nobody thought possible.
President Trump, as you know, the FBI says overall violent crime is actually coming down in this country. But Vice
Excuse me,
President
the
Harris,
FBI they were defrauding statements. They didn't include the worst cities. They didn't include the cities with the worst crime. It was a fraud, just like their number of 818,000 jobs that they said they created turned out to be a fraud.
President Trump, thank you. I'll let you respond, Vice President Harris.
Well, I think this is so rich coming from someone who has been prosecuted for national security crimes, economic crimes, election interference, has been found liable for sexual assault, and his next big court appearance is in November at his own criminal sentencing. And let's be clear, where each person stands on the issue of what is important about respect for the rule of law and respect for law enforcement. The former vice president called for defunding federal law enforcement, 45,000 agents, get this, on the day after he was arraigned on 34 felony counts. So let's talk about what is important in this race. It is important that we move forward, that we turn the page on this same old tired rhetoric and address the needs of the American people, address what we need to do about the housing shortage, which I have a plan for, address what we must do to support our small businesses, address bringing down the price of groceries. But frankly, the American people are exhausted with this same old tired playbook.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
Excuse me. Every one of those cases was started by them against their political opponent. And I'm winning most of them, and I will win the rest on appeal. And you saw that with the decision that came down just recently from the Supreme Court. I'm winning most of them. But those are cases, it's called weaponization. Never happened in this country. They weaponized the Justice Department. Every one of those cases was involved with the DOJ, from Atlanta and Fani Willis to the Attorney General of New York and the DA in New York. Every one of those cases. And then they say, oh, he's a criminal. They're the ones that made them go after me. By the way, Joe Biden was found essentially guilty on the documents case. And what happened in my documents case? They said, oh, that's the toughest of them all. A complete and total victory. 2 months ago, it was thrown out. It's weaponization, and they used it, and it's never happened in this country. They used it to try and win an election. They're fake cases.
President Trump, thank you. A really quick response here, Vice President Harris, on this notion of weaponization of the Justice Department.
Well, let's talk about extreme and understand the context in which this election in 2024 is taking place. The United States Supreme Court recently ruled that the former president would essentially be immune from any misconduct if he were to enter the White House again. Understand, this is someone who has openly said he would terminate, I'm quoting, terminate the Constitution of the United States, that he would weaponize the Department of Justice against his political enemies. Someone who has openly expressed disdain for members of our military. Understand what it would mean if Donald Trump were back in the White House with no guardrails, because certainly we know now the court won't stop him. We know J.D. Vance is not going to stop him. It's up to the American people
Vice President
to stop
Harris,
him.
Thank you. Lindsay?
Vice President Harris.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably one of the most important topics in this election, is the crimes that Donald Trump committed and the fact that he's running for the presidency so that he can interfere in those investigations, interfere in those trials. And the fact that ABC is only giving Kamala just like a little bit of time to respond to that gets under my skin, because that is so damn important. It is our rule of law. It is our system of justice that he is attacking here, not so that he can help his MAGA cult and his voters. He's just doing it for himself. And so really that needs to be called out, and we'll see if Kamala circles back to that.
In your last run for president.
This is the one that weaponized, not me. She weaponized. I probably took a bullet to the head because of the things that they say about me. They
why are
talk
we letting
about
him talk?
Democracy. I'm a threat to democracy. They're the threat to democracy
President
with a fake
Trump.
Russia investigation
We do have a lot
that
to get.
went nowhere.
We have a lot to get to. Lindsay?
Vice President Harris, in your
This
last
is
run
good
for
for Kamala.
president, you said you wanted to ban fracking. Now you don't. You wanted mandatory government buyback programs for assault weapons. Now your campaign says you don't. You supported decriminalizing border crossings. Now you're taking a harder line. I know you say that your values have not changed. So then why have so many of your policy positions changed?
So my values have not changed, and I'm going to discuss at least every point that you've made. But in particular, let's talk about fracking, because we're here in Pennsylvania. I made that very clear in 2020. I will not ban fracking. I have not banned fracking as Vice President of the United States. And in fact, I was the tie-breaking vote on the Inflation Reduction Act, which opened new leases for fracking. My position is that we have got to invest in diverse sources of energy so we reduce our reliance on foreign oil. We have had the largest increase in domestic oil production in history because of an approach that recognizes that we cannot over-rely on foreign oil. As it relates to my values, let me tell you, I grew up a middle-class kid raised by a hardworking mother who worked and saved and was able to buy our first home when I was a teenager. The values I bring to the importance of home ownership, knowing not everybody got handed $400 million on a silver platter and then filed bankruptcy 6 times, is a value that I bring to my work to say we are going to work with the private sector and home builders to increase 3 million homes, increase by 3 million homes by the end of my first term. My work that is related to having a friend when I was in high school who was sexually assaulted by her stepfather. And my focus then on protecting women and children from violent crime is based on a value that is deeply grounded in the importance of standing up for those who are most vulnerable. My work that is about protecting Social Security and Medicare is based on long-standing work that I have done, protecting seniors from scams. My values have not changed. And what is important is that there is a president who actually brings values and a perspective that is about lifting people up and not beating people down and name-calling. The true measure of the leader is the leader who actually understands the strength is not in beating people down, it's in lifting people up. I intend to be that president.
President Trump, your
Well,
response?
first of all, I wasn't given $400 million. I wish I was. My father was a Brooklyn builder, Brooklyn, Queens, and a great father, and I learned a lot from him. But I was given a fraction of that, a tiny fraction, and I built it into many, many billions of dollars, many, many billions. And when people see it, they are even surprised. So we don't have to talk about that. Fracking, she's been against it for 12 years. Defund the police, she's been against that forever. She gave all that stuff up very wrongly, very horribly, and everybody's laughing at it, okay? They're all laughing at it. She gave up at least 12 and probably 14 or 15 different policies. Like, she was big on defund the police. In Minnesota, she went out, wait a minute, I'm talking now, if you don't mind, please. Does that sound familiar? She went out in Minnesota and wanted to let criminals that killed people, that burned down Minneapolis, she went out and raised money to get them out of jail. She did things that nobody would ever think of. Now she wants to do transgender operations on illegal aliens that are in prison. This is a radical left liberal that would do this. She wants to confiscate your guns, and she will never allow fracking in Pennsylvania. If she won the election, fracking in Pennsylvania will end on day one. Just to finish, one thing so important in my opinion. So I got the oil business going like nobody has ever done before. When they took over, they got rid of it, started getting rid of it, and the prices were going up the roof. They immediately let these guys go to where they were. I would have been 5 times, 4 times, 5 times higher, because you're talking about 3.5 years ago. They got it up to where I was because they had no choice, because the prices of energy were quadrupling and doubling. You saw what happened to gasoline. So they said, let's go back to Trump. But if she won the election, the day after that election, they'll go back to destroying our country, and oil will be dead, fossil fuel will be dead, we'll go back to windmills, and we'll go back to solar, where they need a whole desert to get some energy to come out of it. You ever see a solar plant? By the way, I'm a big fan of solar, but they take 400, 500 acres of desert
President
soil.
Trump, we have a
These
lot of
are not good
issues
things
that
for
we
the
have to get
environment,
to.
as
We're
she
out of time.
understands.
Thank you.
Lindsay, thank you. We have an election in just 56 days. And I want to talk about the peaceful transfer of power, which, of course, we all know is a cornerstone of our democracy, and the role of a president in a moment of crisis. Mr. President, on January 6th, you told your supporters to march to the Capitol. You said you would be right there with them. The country and the world saw what played out at the Capitol that day, the officers coming under attack. Aides in the West Wing say you watched it unfold on television off the Oval Office. You did send out tweets, but it was more than 2 hours before you sent out that video message telling your supporters to go home. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day?
You just said a thing that isn't covered. Peacefully and patriotically, I said during my speech, not later on. Peacefully and patriotically. And nobody on the other side was killed. Ashley Babbitt was shot by an out-of-control police officer that should have never, ever shot her. It's a disgrace.
But we didn't do this group of people that have been treated so badly. I ask, what about all the people that are pouring into our country and killing people that she allowed to pour in? She was the border czar. Remember that. She was the border czar. She doesn't want to be called the border czar because she's embarrassed by the border. In fact, she said at the beginning, oh, I'm surprised you're not talking about the border yet. That's because she knows what a bad job they've done. What about those people? When are they going to be prosecuted? When are these people from countries all over the world, not just South America? They're coming in from all over the world, David, all over the world. And crime rates are down all over the world because of it.
But let me just
when
ask
are those, David, when are those people going to be prosecuted? When are the people that burned down Minneapolis going to be prosecuted? Or in Seattle? They went into Seattle. They took over a big...
My goodness. My goodness. January 6th comes up and he can't handle it.
...percentage of the city of Seattle. When are those people going to be prosecuted?
But let me just ask
you. You might ask her that question.
You were the president. You were watching it unfold on television. It's a very simple question as we move forward toward another election. Is there anything you regret about what you did on that day? Yes or no?
I had nothing to do with that other than they asked me to make a speech. I showed up for a speech. I said, I think it's going to be big. I went to Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington, D.C., and the mayor put it back in writing, as you know. I said, you know, this is going to be a very big rally or whatever you want to call it. And again, it wasn't done by me. It was done by others. I said, I'd like to give you 10,000 National Guard or soldiers. They rejected me. Nancy Pelosi rejected me. It was just 2 weeks ago. Her daughter has a tape of her saying she is fully responsible for what happened. They want to get rid of that tape. It would have never happened if Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington did their jobs. I wasn't responsible for security. Nancy Pelosi was responsible. She didn't do her job.
The question was about you as president, not about former Speaker Pelosi. But I do want Vice President Harris to respond.
Good. Keep him.
I was at the Capitol on January 6th.
Keep him on track.
I was the vice president-elect. I was also an acting senator. I was there. And on that day, the President of the United States incited a violent mob to attack our nation's capital, to desecrate our nation's capital. On that day, 140 law enforcement officers were injured, and some died. And understand, the former president has been indicted and impeached for exactly that reason. But this is not an isolated situation. Let's remember Charlottesville, where there was a mob of people carrying tiki torches, spewing anti-Semitic hate. And what did the president then at the time say? There were fine people on each side. Let's remember that when it came to the Proud Boys, a militia, the president said, the former president said, stand back and stand by. So for everyone watching who remembers what January 6th was, I say, we don't have to go back. Let's not go back. We're not going back. It's time to turn the page. And if that was a bridge too far for you, well, there is a place in our campaign for you to stand for country, to stand for our democracy, to stand for rule of law, and to end the chaos, and to end the approach that is about attacking the foundations of our democracy because you don't like the outcome. And be clear on that point. Donald Trump, the candidate, has said in this election there will be a bloodbath if this and the outcome of this election is not to his liking. Let's turn the page on this. Let's not go back. Let's chart a course for the future and not go backwards to the past.
Okay, that was the prosecutor coming out, and she came out on the abortion question and she hit him on January 6th. Two things that Donald Trump will always be remembered for, and Kamala's statements here are going to go down in the history of this debate as probably her strongest moments.
Let me just follow up here.
It was a different term, and it was a term that related to energy because they have destroyed our energy business. That was where bloodbath was. Also, on Charlottesville, that story has been, as you would say, debunked Laura Ingraham, Sean Hannity, Jesse, all of these people, they covered it. If they go an extra sentence, they will see it was perfect. It was debunked in almost every newspaper, but they still bring it up, just like they bring 2025 up. They bring all of this stuff up. I ask you this. You talk about the Capitol. Why are we allowing these millions of people to come through on the southern border? How come she's not doing anything? And I'll tell you what I would do, and I would be very proud to do it. I would say we would both leave this debate right now. I'd like to see her go down to Washington, D.C. during this debate, because we're wasting a lot of time. Go down to, because she's been so bad, it's so ridiculous. Go down to Washington, D.C. and let her sign a bill to close up the border, because they have the right to do it. They don't need bills. They have the right to do it. The President of the United States, you'll get him out of bed, you'll wake him up at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you'll say, come on down to the office, let's sign a bill. If he signs a bill that the border is closed, all he has to do is say it to the Border Patrol, who are phenomenal. If they do that, the border is closed.
Mr.
Those
President,
people are killing many people, unlike J6.
We talked immigration here tonight. I do want to focus on this next issue to both of you, because it really brings us this into focus, truth in these times that we're living in. Mr. President, for 3.5 years after you lost the 2020 election, you repeatedly falsely claimed that you won, many times saying you won in a landslide. In the past couple of weeks leading up to this debate, you have said, quote, you lost by a whisker, that you, quote, didn't quite make it, that you came up a little bit short.
I said that?
Are you now acknowledging that you lost in 2020?
No, I don't acknowledge that at all.
But
I
you
said
did
that
say
sarcastically.
That.
You know that. It was said, oh, we lost by a whisker. That was said sarcastically. Look, there's so much proof. All you have to do is look at it. And they should have sent it back to the legislatures for approval. I got almost 75 million votes, the most votes any sitting president has ever gotten. I was told if I got 63, which was what I got in 2016, you can't be beaten. The election, people should never be thinking about an election as fraudulent. We need two things. We need walls, and we have to have it. We have to have borders, and we have to have good elections. Our elections are bad. And a lot of these illegal immigrants coming in, they're trying to get them to vote. They can't even speak English. They don't even know what country they're in practically. And these people are trying to get them to vote. And that's why they're allowing them to come into our country.
I did watch all of these pieces of video. I didn't detect the sarcasm, lost by a whisker. We didn't quite make it. And we should just point out here as clarification, and you know this, you and your allies, 60 cases in front of many judges, many of them Republican.
No judge looked at it.
And said
they
said
we didn't have standing. That's the other thing. They said we didn't have standing, a technicality. Can you imagine a system where a person in an election doesn't have standing? The President of the United States doesn't have standing. That's how we lost. If you look at the facts, and I'd love to have you'll do a special on it. I'll show you Georgia, and I'll show you Wisconsin, and I'll show you Pennsylvania, and I'll show you. We have so many facts and statistics, but you know what? That doesn't matter, because we have to solve the problem that we have right now. That's old news. And the problem that we have right now is we have a nation in decline, and they have put it into decline. We have a nation that is dying, David.
Mr. President, thank you. Vice President Harris, you heard the president there tonight. He said he didn't say that. That he lost by a whisker. So he still believes he did not lose the election that was won by President Biden.
Sorry, guys, my microphone was still off. I was just saying that Donald Trump, every accusation is an admission, and that he knows that the chances of him being elected are dying, they're diminishing, and the chances that he's going to jail are growing.
And yourself. But I do want to ask you about something that's come up in the last couple of days. This was a post from President Trump about this upcoming election just weeks away. He said, when I win, those people who cheated, and then he lists donors, voters, election officials, he says will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, which will include long-term prison sentences. One of your campaign's top lawyers responded saying, we won't let Donald Trump intimidate us. We won't let him suppress the vote. Is that what you believe he's trying to do here?
Donald Trump was fired by 81 million people. So let's be clear about that. And clearly he is having a very difficult time processing that. But we cannot afford to have a president of the United States who attempts, as he did in the past, to upend the will of the voters in a free and fair election. And I'm going to tell you that I have traveled the world as Vice President of the United States, and world leaders are laughing at Donald Trump. I have talked with military leaders, some of whom worked with you, and they say you're a disgrace. And when you then talk in this way in a presidential debate and deny what over and over again are court cases you have lost because you did, in fact, lose that election, it leads one to believe that perhaps we do not have in the candidate to my right the temperament or the ability to not be confused about fact. That's deeply troubling, and the American people deserve better.
I'll give you 1 minute to respond, Mr. President.
Let me just say about world leaders. Viktor Orban, one of the most respected men, they call him a strong man. He's a tough person.
Viktor
Smart.
Orban.
Prime Minister of
dude.
Hungary. They said,
Please,
why
dude.
is
A
the
Russian
whole world
puppet.
blowing up? 3 years ago, it wasn't. Why is it blowing up? He said, because you need Trump back as president. They were afraid of him. China was afraid, and I don't like to use the word afraid, but I'm just quoting him. China was afraid of him. North Korea was afraid of him. Look at what's going on with North Korea, by the way. He said Russia was afraid of him. I ended the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, and Biden put it back on day one, but he ended the XL pipeline. The XL pipeline in our country, he ended that. But he let the Russians build a pipeline going all over Europe and heading into Germany, the biggest pipeline in the world. Look, Viktor Orban said it. He said the most respected, most feared person is Donald Trump. We had no problems when Trump was president, but when this weak, pathetic man that you saw at a debate just a few months ago, that if he weren't in that debate, he'd be running instead of her. She got no votes. He got 14 million votes. What you did, you talk about a threat to democracy. He got 14 million votes, and they threw him out of office. And you know what? I'll give you a little secret. He hates her. He can't stand her. But he got 14 million votes. They threw him out. She got 0 votes. And when she ran, she was the first one to leave because she failed. And now she's running. I don't understand it, but I'm okay with it because
your time is
I
up.
think we're going to do very well.
We've got a lot more to get to.
Turning now to the Israel-Hamas war and the hostages who are still being held, Americans among them. Vice President Harris, in December, you said, quote, Israel has a right to defend itself, but you added, quote, it matters how, saying international humanitarian law must be respected. Israel must do more to protect innocent civilians. You said that 9 months ago. Now an estimated 40,000 Palestinians are dead. Nearly 100 hostages remain. Just last week, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said there's not a deal in the making. President Biden has not been able to break through the stalemate. How would you do it?
Well, let's understand how we got here. On October 7, Hamas, a terrorist organization, slaughtered 1,200 Israelis. Many of them young people who were simply attending a concert. Women were horribly raped. And so absolutely, I said then, I say now, Israel has a right to defend itself. We would. And how it does so matters. Because it is also true, far too many innocent Palestinians have been killed. Children, mothers. What we know is that this war must end. It must end immediately, and the way it will end is we need a ceasefire deal and we need the hostages out. And so we will continue to work around the clock on that. Work around the clock, also understanding that we must chart a course for a two-state solution. And in that solution, there must be security for the Israeli people and Israel, and in equal measure for the Palestinians. But the one thing I will assure you always, I will always give Israel the ability to defend itself, in particular as it relates to Iran and any threat that Iran and its proxies pose to Israel. But we must have a two-state solution where we can rebuild Gaza, where the Palestinians have security, self-determination, and the dignity they so rightly deserve.
President Trump, how would you negotiate with Netanyahu and also Hamas in order to get the hostages out and prevent the killing of more innocent civilians in Gaza?
If I were president, it would have never started. If I were president, Russia would have never, ever, I know Putin very well, he would have never, and there was no threat of it either, by the way, for 4 years, have gone into Ukraine and killed millions of people when you add it up, far worse than people understand what's going on over there. But when she mentions about Israel, all of a sudden, she hates Israel. She wouldn't even meet with Netanyahu when he went to Congress to make a very important speech. She refused to be there because she was at a sorority party of hers. She wanted to go to the sorority party. She hates Israel. If she's president, I believe that Israel will not exist within 2 years from now. And I've been pretty good at predictions, and I hope I'm wrong about that one. She hates Israel. At the same time, in her own way, she hates the Arab population because the whole place is going to get blown up. Arabs, Jewish people, Israel will be gone. It would have never happened. Iran was broke under Donald Trump. Now Iran has $300 billion because they took off all the sanctions that I had. Iran had no money for Hamas or Hezbollah or any of the 28 different spheres of terror. And they are spheres of terror, horrible terror. They had no money. It was a big story, and you know it. You covered it very well, actually. They had no money for terror. They were broke. Now they're a rich nation, and now what they're doing is they're spreading that money around. Look at what's happening with the Houthis and Yemen. Look at what's going on in the Middle East. This would have never happened. I will get that settled and fast, and I'll get the war with Ukraine and Russia ended. If I'm president-elect, I'll get it done before even becoming president.
Vice President Harris, he says you hate Israel.
So,
that's
wait,
absolutely not true. I have
did we
my
get
entire
any
career and life supported Israel
strategy
and
for
the Israeli
Israel
people.
and
He knows
Palestine?
that.
No,
He's
nothing.
trying to, again, divide and distract from the reality, which is it is very well known that Donald Trump is weak and wrong on national security and foreign policy. It is well known that he admires dictators, wants to be a dictator on day one, according to himself. It is well known that he said of Putin that he can do whatever the hell he wants and go into Ukraine. It is well known that he said when Russia went into Ukraine, it was brilliant. It is well known he exchanged love letters with Kim Jong-un, and it is absolutely well known that these dictators and autocrats are rooting for you to be president again because they're so clear they can manipulate you with flattery and favors. And that is why so many military leaders who you have worked with have told me you are a disgrace. That is why we understand that we have to have a president who is not consistently weak and wrong on
Vice
national
President
security,
Harris.
including the importance of upholding and respecting in highest regard our military.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
They're the ones, and she's the one.
No,
that
man,
caused
we're
it.
not doing this.
That's
Why are we
weak
letting
on
him
national
just
security by
get this
allowing
mic back?
every nation last month for the year, 168 different countries sending people into our country. Their crime rates are way down. Putin endorsed her last week, said, I hope she wins. And I think he meant it because what he's gotten away with is absolutely incredible. It wouldn't have happened with me.
What a joke.
The leaders of other countries think that they're weak and incompetent, and they are. They're grossly incompetent. And I just ask one question. Why does Biden go in and kill the Keystone Pipeline and approve the single biggest deal that Russia's ever made, Nord Stream 2, the biggest pipeline anywhere in the world going to Germany and all over Europe? Because they're weak and they're ineffective. And Biden, by the way,
President
gets paid
Trump,
a lot of money.
Thank you. We have a lot of issues to get to.
We'll be right back
Yeah,
with much
thank
more of this
you.
historic
My
ABC News
goodness.
presidential debate from the National
My
Constitution Center right
goodness.
here in Philadelphia. Back in a moment.
Shut him up. Okay. And since we're behind a little bit, we are just going to skip through
Most
these
watched
commercials.
news.
Let me mute this. Sorry, guys. We can do this. Woo. My. Donald is slowly losing it. Okay, here we are. We're back.
To turn to the war in Ukraine. We're now 2.5 years into this conflict. Mr. President, it has been the position of the Biden administration that we must defend Ukraine from Russia, from Vladimir Putin, to defend their sovereignty, their democracy, that it's in America's best interest to do so, arguing that if Putin wins, he may be emboldened to move even further into other countries. You have said you would solve this war in 24 hours. You said so just before the break tonight. How exactly would you do that? And I want to ask you a very simple question tonight. Do you want Ukraine to win this war?
I want the war to stop. I want to save lives that are being uselessly, people being killed by the millions. It's the millions. It's so much worse than the numbers that you're getting, which are fake numbers. Look, we're in for 250 billion or more because they don't ask Europe, which is a much bigger beneficiary to getting this thing done than we are. They're in for $150 billion less because Biden and you don't have the courage to ask Europe like I did with NATO. They paid billions and billions, hundreds of billions of dollars when I said, either you pay up or we're not going to protect you anymore. So that's maybe one of the reasons they don't like me as much as they like weak people. But you take a look at what's happening. We're in for 250 to 275 billion. They're into 100 to 150. They should be forced to equalize. With that being said, I want to get the war settled. I know Zelensky very well, and I know Putin very well. I have a good relationship, and they respect your president, okay? They respect me. They don't respect Biden. How would you respect him? Why? For what reason? He hasn't even made a phone call in 2 years to Putin, hasn't spoken to anybody. They don't even try and get it. That is a war that's dying to be settled. I will get it settled before I even become president. If I win, when I'm president-elect, and what I'll do is I'll speak to one, I'll speak to the other, I'll get them together. That war would have never happened. And in fact, when I saw Putin after I left, unfortunately left because our country has gone to hell. But after I left, when I saw him building up soldiers, he did it after I left, I said, oh, he must be negotiating. It must be a good, strong point of negotiation. Well, it wasn't, because Biden had no idea how to talk to him. He had no idea how to stop it. And now you have millions of people dead, and it's only getting worse, and it could lead to World War III. Don't kid yourself, David. We're playing with World War III, and we have a president that we don't even know if he's... Where is our president? We don't even know if he's a president.
And just to clarify
they
here...
threw him out of a campaign like a dog. We don't even know. Is he our president? But we have a president,
Mr. President,
that doesn't know he's alive.
Your time is up. Just to clarify in the question, do you believe it's in the U.S. best interests for Ukraine to win this war, yes or no?
I think it's the U.S. best interest to get this war finished and just get it done.
All right.
Negotiate a deal, because we have to stop all of these human lives from being destroyed.
I want to take this to Vice President Harris. I want to get your thoughts on support for Ukraine in this moment, but also, as Commander-in-Chief, if elected, how would you deal with Vladimir Putin, and would it be any different from what we're seeing from President Biden?
Well, first of all, it's important to remind the former president you're not running against Joe Biden, you're running against me. I believe the reason that Donald Trump says that this war would be over within 24 hours is because he would just give it up. And that's not who we are as Americans. Let's understand what happened here. I actually met with Zelensky a few days before Russia invaded, tried through force to change territorial boundaries, to defy one of the most important international rules and norms, which is the importance of sovereignty and territorial integrity. And I met with President Zelensky. I shared with him American intelligence about how he could defend himself. Days later, I went to NATO's eastern flank, to Poland and Romania. And through the work that I and others did, we brought 50 countries together to support Ukraine in its righteous defense. And because of our support, because of the air defense, the ammunition, the artillery, the javelins, the Abrams tanks that we have provided, Ukraine stands as an independent and free country. If Donald Trump were president, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv right now. And understand what that would mean, because Putin's agenda is not just about Ukraine. Understand why the European allies and our NATO allies are so thankful that you are no longer president, and that we understand the importance of the greatest military alliance the world has ever known, which is NATO, and what we have done to preserve the ability of Zelensky and the Ukrainians to fight for their independence. Otherwise, Putin would be sitting in Kyiv with his eyes on the rest of Europe, starting with Poland. And why don't you tell the 800,000 Polish Americans right here in Pennsylvania how quickly you would give up for the sake of favor and what you think is a friendship with what is known to be a dictator who would eat you for lunch.
Vice President Harris, thank you. We've heard from both of you on Ukraine tonight. Afghanistan came up in the last hour. I wanted her to respond to something you said earlier, and now, please, I'll give you a minute here.
Putin would be sitting in Moscow, and he wouldn't have lost 300,000 men and women, but he would have been sitting in Moscow. Quiet, please. He would have been sitting in Moscow, much happier than he is right now. But eventually, you know, he's got a thing that other people don't have. He's got nuclear weapons. They don't ever talk about that. He's got nuclear weapons. Nobody ever thinks about that. And eventually, maybe he'll use them, and maybe he hasn't been that threatening, but he does have that. Something we don't even like to talk about. Nobody likes to talk about it. But just so you understand,
right, Donald.
They sent her to negotiate peace before this war started. 3 days later, he went in and he started the war because everything they said was weak and stupid. They said the wrong things. That war should have never started. She was the emissary. They sent her in to negotiate with Zelensky and Putin, and she did. And the war started 3 days later. And that's the kind of talent we have with her. She's worse than Biden. In my opinion, I think he's the worst president in the history of our country. She goes down as the worst vice president in the history of our country. But let me tell you something. She is a horrible negotiator. They sent her in to negotiate. As soon as they left, Putin did the invasion.
President Trump, thank you. You did bring up something. You said she went to negotiate with Vladimir Putin. Vice President Harris, have you ever met Vladimir Putin? Can you clarify tonight?
Yet again, I said it at the beginning of this debate, you're going to hear a bunch of lies coming from this fellow. And that is another one. When I went to meet with President Zelensky, I've now met with him over 5 times. The reality is it has been about standing as America always should, as a leader upholding international rules and norms, as a leader who shows strength, understanding that the alliances we have around the world are dependent on our ability to look out for our friends and not favor our enemies because you adore strongmen instead of caring about democracy. And that is very much what is at stake here. The President of the United States is commander-in-chief. And the American people have a right to rely on a president who understands the significance of America's role and responsibility in terms of ensuring that there is stability and ensuring we stand up for our principles and not sell them for the benefit of personal flattery.
We've talked about you.
Yeah, I mean, also, Donald, why the hell are you smirking and smiling as Kamala's talking about America's position in the world and fighting off fascists and standing up for democracy? He's got this smirk on his face that makes it very clear that he doesn't care about that. And exactly like Kamala said there, he's willing to sell us out if it meant that he has a better relationship with the strong man, Vladimir Putin.
Ukraine and Vladimir Putin. I do want to talk about Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of this debate. I want to move on to Afghanistan.
Stoltenberg said Trump did the most amazing thing I've ever seen. He got these countries, the 28 countries at the time, to pay up. He said, I've never seen. He's the head of NATO. He said, I've never seen. For years, we were paying almost all of NATO. We were being ripped off by European nations, both on trade and on NATO. I got them to pay up by saying one of the statements you made before, if you don't pay, we're not going to protect you.
President
Otherwise,
Trump.
we would have never gotten it. He said it was one of the most incredible jobs that he's ever seen done.
Thank you. I want to turn to Afghanistan. It came up in the first hour of the debate, and we witnessed a poignant moment today on Capitol Hill, honoring the soldiers who died in the chaotic withdrawal from Afghanistan. I do want to ask the Vice President, do you believe you bear any responsibility in the way that withdrawal played out?
Well, I will tell you, I agreed with President Biden's decision to pull out of Afghanistan. 4 presidents said they would, and Joe Biden did. And as a result, America's taxpayers are not paying the $300 million a day we were paying for that endless war. And as of today, there is not one member of the United States military who is in active duty in a combat zone in any war zone around the world, the first time this century. But let's understand how we got to where we are. Donald Trump, when he was president, negotiated one of the weakest deals you can imagine. He calls himself a deal maker. Even his national security advisor said it was a weak, terrible deal. And here's how it went down. He bypassed the Afghan government. He negotiated directly with a terrorist organization called the Taliban. The negotiation involved the Taliban getting 5,000 Taliban terrorists released. And get this, and the president at the time invited the Taliban to Camp David, a place of storied significance for us as Americans, a place where we honor the importance of American diplomacy, where we invite and receive respected world leaders. And this former president, as president, invited them to Camp David because he does not, again, appreciate the role and responsibility of the President of the United States to be commander-in-chief with a level of respect. And this gets back to the point of how he has consistently disparaged and demeaned members of our military, fallen soldiers, and the work that we must do to uphold the strength and the respect of the United States of America around the world.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, your response to her saying that you began the negotiations with the Taliban.
So,
okay, real quick. She's very good. Another very, very good moment from Kamala Harris, like we kind of all had a feeling she was gonna bring to the table.
if you take a look at that period of time, the Taliban was killing our soldiers, a lot of them, with snipers. And I got involved with the Taliban because the Taliban was doing the killing. That's the fighting force within Afghanistan. They don't bother doing that because, you know, they deal with the wrong people all the time. But I got involved. And Abdul is the head of the Taliban. He is still the head of the Taliban. And I told Abdul, don't do it anymore. You do it anymore, you're going to have problems. And he said, why do you send me a picture of my house? I said, you're going to have to figure that out, Abdul. And for 18 months, we had nobody killed. We did have an agreement negotiated by Mike Pompeo. It was a very good agreement. The reason it was good, it was we were getting out. We would have been out faster than them, but we wouldn't have lost the soldiers. We wouldn't have left many Americans behind, and we wouldn't have left $85 billion worth of brand new, beautiful military equipment behind. And just to finish, they blew it. The agreement said you have to do this, and they didn't do it. They didn't do it. The agreement was terminated by us because they didn't do what they were supposed to do.
I want to move on.
And these people did the worst withdrawal, and in my opinion, the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. And by the way, that's why Russia attacked Ukraine, because they saw how incompetent she and her boss are.
President Trump, thank you. I want to move on now to race and politics in this country. Mr. President, you recently said of Vice President Harris, quote, I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black. I want to ask a bigger picture question here tonight. Why do you believe it's appropriate to weigh in on the racial identity of your opponent?
I don't, and I don't care. I don't care what she is. I don't care. You make a big deal out of something, I couldn't care less. Whatever she wants to be is okay with me.
But those were your words, so I'm asking.
I don't know. I mean, all I can say is I read where she was not black, that she put out, and I'll say that. And then I read that she was black, and that's okay. Either one was okay with me. That's up to her. That's up to her.
Vice President Harris, your thoughts on this?
I think it's, I mean, honestly, I think it's a tragedy that we have someone who wants to be president who has consistently, over the course of his career, attempted to use race to divide the American people. You know, I do believe that the vast majority of us know that we have so much more in common than what separates us, and we don't want this kind of approach that is just constantly trying to divide us, and especially by race. And let's remember how Donald Trump started. He was land, he owned buildings, and he was investigated because he refused to rent property to black families. Let's remember, this is the same individual who took out a full-page ad in the New York Times calling for the execution of 5 young black and Latino boys who were innocent, the Central Park 5. Took out a full-page ad calling for their execution. This is the same individual who spread birther lies about the first black president of the United States. And I think the American people want better than that, want better than this, want someone who understands, as I do, I travel our country. We see in each other a friend. We see in each other a neighbor. We don't want a leader who is constantly trying to have Americans point their fingers at each other. I meet with people all the time who tell me, can we please just have discourse about how we're going to invest in the aspirations and the ambitions and the dreams of the American people? Knowing that regardless of people's color or the language their grandmother speaks, we all have the same dreams and aspirations and want a president who invests in those, not in hate and division.
Vice President Harris, thank you. Lindsay?
President Trump, this is now your 3rd time.
This is the most divisive presidency in the history of our country. There's never been anything like it. They're destroying
ABC, that's
our
not a
country.
response.
And they come up with things like what she just said, going back many, many years, when a lot of people, including Mayor Bloomberg, agreed with me on the Central Park 5. They admitted, they said, they pled guilty. And I said, well, if they pled guilty, they badly hurt a person, killed a person ultimately. And if they pled guilty, then they pled, we're not guilty. But this is a person that has to stretch back years, 40, 50 years ago, because there's nothing now. I built one of the greatest economies in the history of the world, and I'm going to build it again. It's going to be bigger, better, and stronger. But they're destroying our economy. They have no idea what a good economy is. Their oil policies, every single policy. And remember this, she is Biden. You know, she's trying to get away from Biden. I don't know the gentleman, she says. She is Biden. The worst inflation we've ever had, a horrible economy because inflation has made it so bad, and she can't get away with that.
Thank you. Your time
That's
is up.
a weird. Before Kamala responds there, did you hear Donald Trump basically admit to his lies about I didn't know about Project 2025? He says there Kamala says she didn't know Biden. Like, what the hell is he talking about? What he's doing there is he's revealing his strategy of when he's caught in a lie, it's, I don't know about Project 2025. I didn't know when they asked him earlier about if he other things that he said. I can't remember exactly what they grilled him on, but it was, did I say that? It was that we lost by a whisker. Did I say that? I don't know if I said that. It was a joke. Accusations are admissions with this guy.
Briefly. Clearly, I am not Joe Biden, and I am certainly not Donald Trump. And what I do offer is a new generation of leadership for our country. One who believes in what is possible, one who brings a sense of optimism about what we can do instead of always disparaging the American people. I believe in what we can do to strengthen our small businesses, which is why I have a plan. Let's talk about our plans and let's compare the plans. I have a plan to give startup businesses $50,000 tax deduction to pursue their ambitions, their innovation, their ideas, their hard work. I have a plan, $6,000 for young families for the first year of your child's life to help you in that most critical stage of your child's development. I have a plan that is about allowing people to be able to pursue what has been fleeting in terms of the American dream by offering a help with down payment of $25,000 down payment assistance for first-time home buyers. That's the kind of conversation, I believe, David, that people really want tonight, as opposed to a conversation that is constantly about belittling and name-calling. Let's turn the page
Vice President
and move
Harris,
forward.
thank you. Let's turn to policy.
President
Let's
Trump,
turn back
we
to
have
policy.
to move on. President
There
Trump.
we go. They're not
Let's turn to
letting them.
policy, please.
Thank you.
To
Thank
defund
you.
the police.
No,
She has a plan
Don't let
to
him talk.
confiscate everybody's gun.
President Trump,
she
we
has
do
a
have to
plan
move on to
not
other
allow
issues.
fracking in Pennsylvania or anywhere else.
Okay.
That's
Thank you,
what
Mr.
her
President.
plan is until just recently.
I just need
Lindsay,
to
go ahead.
respond
President
because
Trump,
the
President
former
Trump.
president has
No,
said
I'm
something
sorry.
twice that I need to
No,
respond to.
I'm sorry. We're going to move on, Vice
one
President
time
Harris.
to what he has
President
said
Trump, this
multiple
is
times.
now your
Yes.
third time running for president. You have long vowed
What the
to
hell was
repeal
that
and
about?
replace the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. You have failed to accomplish that. You now say you're going to keep Obamacare, quote, unless we can do something much better. Last month, you said, quote, we're working on it. So tonight, 9 years after you first started running, do you have a plan, and can you tell us what it is?
Obamacare was lousy health care, always was. It's not very good today. And what I said, that if we come up with something, and we are working on things, we're going to do it, and we're going to replace
Still
it. But
working on things,
remember
Donald.
this. I inherited Obamacare because Democrats wouldn't change it. They wouldn't vote for it. They were unanimous. They wouldn't vote to change it. If they would have done that, we would have had a much better plan than Obamacare. But the Democrats came up. They wouldn't vote for it. I had a choice to make when I was president. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, never going to be great, or do I let it rot? And I felt I had an obligation, even though politically it would have been good to just let it rot and let it go away. I decided, and I told my people, the top people, and they're very good people. I have a lot of good people in that administration. We read about the bad ones. We had some real bad ones, too, and so do they. They have really bad ones. The difference is they don't get rid of them. But let me just explain. I had a choice to make. Do I save it and make it as good as it can be, or do I let it rot? And I saved it. I did the right thing. But it's still never going to be great, and it's too expensive for people. And what we will do is we're looking at different plans. If we can come up with a plan that's going to cost our people, our population, less money and be better health care than Obamacare, then I would absolutely do it. But until then, I'd run it as good as it can be run.
So just a yes or no, you still do not have a plan?
I have concepts of a plan. I'm not president right now. But if we come up with something, I would only change it if we come up with something that's better and less expensive.
Concepts of a
And there are
plan.
concepts and options we
It's all up
have
here.
to do that. And you'll be hearing about it in the not-too-distant future.
Vice President Harris, in 2017, you supported Bernie Sanders'
What a
proposal to do
loser.
away with private insurance
What
and
a
create a
loser.
government-run healthcare system. 2 years later, you proposed a plan that included a private insurance option.
What a loser.
What is your plan today?
Well, first of all, I absolutely support, and over the last 4 years as vice president, private health care options. But what we need to do is maintain and grow the Affordable Care Act. But I'll get to that, Lindsay. I just need to respond to a previous point that the former president has made. I've made very clear my position on fracking. And then this business about taking everyone's guns away. Tim Walz and I are both gun owners. We're not taking anybody's guns away. So stop with the continuous lying about this stuff. As it relates to the Affordable Care Act, understand, just look at the history to know where people stand. When Donald Trump was president, 60 times he tried to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. 60 times. I was a senator at the time when I will never forget the early morning hours when it was up for a vote in the United States Senate. And the late, great John McCain, who you have disparaged as being, you don't like him, you said, at the time because he got caught. He was an American hero. The late, great John McCain, I will never forget that night, walked onto the Senate floor and said, no, you don't. No, you don't. No, you don't get rid of the Affordable Care Act. You have no plan. And what the Affordable Care Act has done is eliminate the ability of insurance companies to deny people with pre-existing conditions. I don't have to tell the people watching tonight, you remember what that was like? Remember when an insurance company could deny if a child had asthma, if someone was a breast cancer survivor, if a grandparent had diabetes? And thankfully, As I've been vice president, and we over the last 4 years have strengthened the Affordable Care Act, we have allowed for the first time Medicare to negotiate drug prices on behalf of you, the American people. Donald Trump said he was going to allow Medicare to negotiate drug prices. He never did. We did. And now we have capped the cost of insulin at $35 a month. Since I've been vice president, we have capped the cost of prescription medication for seniors at $2,000 a year. And when I am president, we will do that for all people, understanding that the value I bring to this is that access to health care should be a right and not just a privilege of those who can afford it. And the plan has to be to strengthen the Affordable Care Act, not get rid of it.
Vice
Past
President
prologue
Harris, thank
in terms
you.
of where Donald Trump stands on that.
I want to move to an issue that's important for a lot
She made a mistake. Number one, John McCain fought Obamacare for 10 years. But it wasn't only him. It were all of the Democrats that kept it going. And you know what? We can do much better than Obamacare, much less money. But she won't improve private insurance for people, private medical insurance. That's another thing she doesn't want to get. People are paying privately for insurance that have worked hard and made money, and they want to have private. She wants everybody to be on government insurance where you wait 6 months for an operation that you need immediately.
President Trump, thank you. We have another issue that we'd like to get to that's important for a number of Americans, in particular younger voters, and that's climate change. President Trump, with regard to the environment, you say that we have to have clean air and clean water. Vice President Harris, you call climate change an existential threat. The question to you both tonight is, what would you do to fight climate change? And Vice President Harris, we'll start with you. 1 minute for you each.
Well, the former president had said that climate change is a hoax. And what we know is that it is very real. You ask anyone who lives in a state who has experienced these extreme weather occurrences, who now is either being denied home insurance or it's being jacked up. You ask anybody who has been the victim of what that means in terms of losing their home, having nowhere to go. We know that we can actually deal with this issue. The young people of America care deeply about this issue. And I am proud that as vice president over the last 4 years, we have invested $1 trillion in a clean energy economy, while we have also increased domestic gas production to historic levels. We have created over 800,000 new manufacturing jobs while I have been vice president. We have invested in clean energy to the point that we are opening up factories around the world. Donald Trump said he was going to create manufacturing jobs. He lost manufacturing jobs. And I'm also proud to have the endorsement of the United Auto Workers and Sean Fain, who also know that part of building a clean energy economy includes investing in American-made products, American automobiles. It includes growing what we can do around American manufacturing and opening up auto plants, not closing them like happened under Donald Trump.
Vice President Harris, thank you.
That didn't happen under Donald Trump. Let me just tell you, they lost 10,000 manufacturing jobs this last month. It's going, they're all leaving. They're building big auto plants in Mexico, in many cases owned by China. They're building these massive plants, and they think they're going to sell their cars into the United States because of these people. What they have given to China is unbelievable. But we're not going to let that. We'll put tariffs on those cars so they can't come into our country, because they will kill the United Auto Workers and any auto worker, whether it's in Detroit or South Carolina or any other place. What they've done to business and manufacturing in this country is horrible. We have nothing because they refuse. You know, Biden doesn't go after people because supposedly China paid him millions of dollars. He's afraid to do it. Between him and his son, they get all this money from Ukraine. They get all this money from all of these different countries. And then you wonder, why is he so loyal to this one, that one, Ukraine, China? Why is he? Why did he get $3.5 million from the mayor of Moscow's wife? Why did she pay him $3.5 million? This is a crooked administration, and they're selling our country down the tubes.
President Trump, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be right back with closing statements from both of our candidates. An historic night, this ABC News presidential debate from Philadelphia. Back in a moment.
My goodness. Donald Trump trying to tie everything together there to prove that Joe Biden is just corrupt and beholden to China, that China's building auto factories in Mexico, and that the mayor of Moscow's wife is somehow involved in a $3 million transfer to Joe Biden, and somehow that has to do with the auto factories in Mexico, and so Biden is somehow shipping jobs out because he's the president, and that would help him somehow. Just, oh my gosh, Donald Trump is that guy in the movies where he's got all the twine, circled, and he's got the conspiracy theory in his room at Mar-a-Lago. Man, just kind of reiterating in everyone's minds that he is completely unfit and has lost it. Okay, it looks like we're back here. Let me jump in here. Let's see. All right, we're getting close. We're getting close. Here we go.
And Lindsay Davis.
Welcome back tonight. The time has come for closing statements, and Vice President Harris, we begin with you.
So I think you've heard tonight two very different visions for our country. One that is focused on the future, and the other that is focused on the past, and an attempt to take us backward. But we're not going back. And I do believe that the American people know we all have so much more in common than what separates us. And we can chart a new way forward. And a vision of that includes having a plan, understanding the aspirations, the dreams, the hopes, the ambition of the American people, which is why I intend to create an opportunity economy, investing in small businesses, in new families, in what we can do around protecting seniors, what we can do that is about giving hardworking folks a break and bringing down the cost of living. I believe in what we can do together that is about sustaining America's standing in the world and ensuring that we have the respect that we so rightly deserve, including respecting our military and ensuring we have the most lethal fighting force in the world. I will be a president that will protect our fundamental rights and freedoms, including the right of a woman to make decisions about her own body and not have her government tell her what to do. I'll tell you, I started my career as a prosecutor. I was a DA, I was an attorney general, a United States senator, and now vice president. I've only had one client, the people. And I'll tell you, as a prosecutor, I never asked a victim or a witness, are you a Republican or a Democrat? The only thing I ever asked them, are you okay? And that's the kind of president we need right now. Someone who cares about you and is not putting themselves first. I intend to be a president for all Americans and focus on what we can do over the next 10 and 20 years to build back up our country by investing right now in you, the American people.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump?
Okay, just real quick before Donald Trump gets to his, what will definitely be an insane closing statement, full of dark division and hatred. I think Kamala's line there about representing people and never asking whether or not they're Republican or a Democrat is probably my favorite line of the night.
So she just started by saying she's going to do this, she's going to do that, she's going to do all these wonderful things. Why hasn't she done it? She's been there for 3.5 years. They've had 3.5 years to fix the border. They've had 3.5 years to create jobs and all the things we talked about. Why hasn't she done it? She should leave right now, go down to that beautiful White House, go to the Capitol, get everyone together and do the things you want to do, but you haven't done it, and you won't do it because you believe in things that the American people don't believe in. You believe in things like we're not going to frack. We're not going to take fossil fuel. We're not going to do things that are going to make this country strong, whether you like it or not. Germany tried that, and within 1 year, they were back to building normal energy plants. We're not ready for it. We can't sacrifice our country for the sake of bad vision. But I just ask one simple question. Why didn't she do it? We're a failing nation. We're a nation that's in serious decline. We're being laughed at all over the world. All over the world, they're laughing. I know the leaders very well. They're coming to see me. They call me. We're laughed at all over the world. They don't understand what happened to us as a nation. We're not a leader. We don't have any idea what's going on. We have wars going on in the Middle East. We have wars going on with Russia and Ukraine. We're going to end up in a third world war, and it'll be a war like no other because of nuclear weapons, the power of weaponry. I rebuilt our entire military.
You're boring.
She gave a lot of it away to the Taliban. She gave it to Afghanistan. What these people have done to our country, and maybe toughest of all, is allowing millions of people to come into our country. Many of them are criminals, and they're destroying our country. The worst president, the worst vice president in the history of our country.
President Trump, thank you. And that is our ABC News presidential debate from here in Philadelphia at the National Constitution Center.
Boring.
I'm Lindsay Davis.
And I'm David Muir. Thank you for watching here in the U.S. and all over the world, and from all of us here at ABC News. Good night.
Okay. So, I mean, that was not nearly the ass whooping that I thought Kamala was going to bring. Maybe she'll deliver that in the second debate. It was still an ass whooping. It was still Kamala just utterly wiped the floor with him. I mean, that was amazing. On January 6th, on abortion, on all of his trials, and the felonies that he's been convicted of. On when it came to Russia and Ukraine, she just danced circles around him by spitting fact after fact. I mean, if we were to look at these two debate performances, you had, like, literally, it was all just doom and gloom and, bragging from Trump, but also just lying about Kamala Harris. And then you had Kamala trying to take that high road and say, hey, look, like, I'm going to actually talk to the people about my plans and give them some hope for the future. Because again, I think what she had to balance here was the fact that he was going to be doom and gloom, and she is not going to let us go back to that type of America. She is going to give us hope, and she is going to try to instill some joy. And I think maybe she can work on that in her closing next debate. I think she can kind of come with a little more joyful closing remarks, but that's kind of hard because, she had Donald Trump right after her speaking, and he would have probably tried to, make fun of this kind of joyful message, and that may have landed. I don't know, but Donald Trump's closing message there, what was it? She was in power for the last 3.5 years. Why hasn't she done anything? And like 15 minutes ago, they're like, so do you have a healthcare plan yet? 9 years later, do you have a healthcare plan? 4 years of being president, do you have a healthcare plan? I have concepts. I mean, just to be a Trump supporter at this point, you just have to be out of your mind to vote for this man now. Like, say what you want, right? Like, you voted for him in 2016. All right. You voted for him again in 2020. Like, okay. But then he went and he attacked the Capitol, right? And he had the Mar-a-Lago documents, and he tried to interfere in the election in Georgia. And it's like what Kamala said there. If that's a bridge too far, there's room for you, in the America that Kamala is going to build. Oh my. Let's check in with some of the post-debate analysis here. Let's see who's talking. All right. All right, let's check in with the MSNBC crew and see what they're talking about here.
It's Donald Trump trying to turn away as the adult in the room approaches and crosses to do what every presidential candidate before her has done in that situation, which is to extend her hand to the other candidate. And Donald Trump runs away from it until he can't. She literally has to corner him to shake his hand, and she does it. Two things I would point out quickly about it. You heard the person who was president of the United States on January 6th say to the American people, I wasn't responsible for security. President of the United States, commander-in-chief is what this job is about, and he's saying when they're attacking the Capitol and I'm doing nothing for 2 hours and more than 2 hours, I wasn't responsible for security.
Cool. Okay. So yeah, before
another thing.
Before I know a lot of you guys are probably heading to bed, so I did want to just say some special thanks to Lenny, Joe, and Maple, my moderators on YouTube, for hanging out. Terrence, I saw you in the beginning right before the debate started. Good to see you. Old Soul, thank you so much for the gifted memberships. That is so big for the channel and for creating some stability in terms of the revenue on the channel. And if anyone else is interested in joining, becoming a Reflect member, you can click join on the video page that you're watching. Anita, always good to see you. We had so many commenters here. We had upwards of like 300 people. So many comments. Miss A, I want to say thank you to you. You were chatting up a storm, and so many great comments. I was trying my best to, watch the comments as they were coming in, and also keep an eye on the debate and try to focus on what was being said. But the Reflect community always coming through, always strong. And I'll say it like I say in almost every other stream, the best community here on YouTube. Let's check back in with MSNBC and see what's going on.
He's going to talk about immigration when it's not even the subject, because he kept going back to the millions of people and they're all criminals. And he kept doing it, and she called him on it. And she said, note that he's going to talk about immigration when it's not the question. And I invite you to attend one of his rallies where he talks about Hannibal Lecter. And I want you to know that people at these rallies start leaving early. What you won't hear him talk about is you. That ended Donald Trump's, the cheese being firmly affixed to the cracker.
Yeah.
He literally, after that, could not stop interrupting. He could not stop going back. He could not stop going right back to his special place where he went on about immigration. He argued. He then turned around and interrupted and tried to keep arguing about crowd size. He tried to say we're going to World War III. He said millions of towns, Aurora, Springfield. He said that multiple times. They're eating dogs and cats. It was after that he went into the dogs and cats. David Weir breaks in and says, no, sir. There is no credible reporting about that. He kept rambling. I think what Vice President Harris managed to do was every single thing that the campaign beforehand said they wanted her to do. She got her policy points out. After this debate, what people will think about when they think about Vice President Harris is $25,000 for building a first home, $50,000 for a new business. They will think about the $6,000 tax credit, because she kept saying it.
Yeah.
And what he kept saying was rambling, bizarre nonsense that made him look old. It made him look unstable. It made him look not just unpresidential, but the look that was on Vice President Harris's face. I kept screenshotting her face. The look said pity. Yeah. She looked like she pitied him. And she kept looking at him like, are you okay? Yeah. And she finally said, I think you're having a hard time connecting with reality. Donald Trump got destroyed in this debate because he can't control his mind. And you don't want a president of the United States that is not in full control of his mind.
Yeah. You could not agree more. I do think, though, that she might be a little too harsh on Trump not controlling his mind. I think that he tries to throw off his opponents by being so erratic and what you saw from Kamala, and we got to go kind of back to what Joy was saying there, and I don't think she gave Kamala enough credit for not taking the bait and not, and it, you know, she was just kind of like, come on. And the one of the amazing things about that opening statement where she said, hey, look, he's going to lie, right? He's just going to lie and lie and lie and lie. That set her up so that she could just sit back and go, oh, no, that's not true. And then when he was going to the extremes to kind of scoff and be like, oh, pity, but also just disgust. That's kind of what I got from Kamala's face. Not so much pity. I don't think, I don't know if there's pity there. I think it's like, you're disgusting, man. Like, oh, what you're trying to do is disgusting. It's also kind of brought me back to what I was thinking about, how Kamala has made it a point in a lot of her rallies to talk about kids, right? Like it's the investing in children's futures and, protecting young girls from the Trump abortion bans and his attack on reproductive rights, right? Like, I think that's going to be a huge strategy, a huge line of attack for Kamala in the second debate, because, you know, everything that Donald Trump talked about here, like, it's almost like a PG-13 movie, right? Almost like a rated R movie where you're like, look, man, you know, somebody said earlier, like, hey, look, my teenagers are really excited to hear this debate. There are 8-year-old children who are watching this debate and grasping what these people are saying. And you've got, excuse my language, but fucking Donald Trump talking about World War III? I mean, imagine that. None of us are 8 years old, but imagine you're 8 years old and you've got a leader on TV threatening world war. It's so dark. Kind of brings me back to the message what I was talking about, how like Kamala is trying, she didn't step into his erratic behavior and his darkness. She stayed above the fray. And I think next time, I think during the next debate, she needs to come at it with like, look, Donald, I've already whooped your ass once, and now we're going to really talk about bring in the joy back to the country.
It was by far the best debate performance against Donald Trump ever by anyone, I think.
Look, you know, including quick parentheses, it may very well be the best televised debate performance ever.
Yeah,
I cannot think of a better one.
I thought it was exceptional. I thought it's the best anyone's ever done against him. Both Republicans in Republican primaries and those big group brawls and one-on-one, even though I think both Biden and Hillary acquitted themselves well against him. The thing that she did, and it almost became like comical at a certain point, was she's doing two things every time. What do I want to communicate? Because we're talking about how do you negotiate this, right? How much him, how much you? What do I want to communicate about what I'm doing? And then, in the midst of that, just this little lure for the fish, and it could be John McCain. You know, if you bring up John McCain, he's going to litigate John McCain. Yes. It could be very fine people at Charlottesville. You know, if you bring up very fine people, he's going to swim upstream to go talk about very fine people. It could be suckers and losers. He's going to go talk about suckers and losers. Every single time she would communicate, and then she would leave dangling this bait. And he would swim up to the bait. And the bait was always a thing that Donald Trump is obsessed with about himself. Yes. A grievance, a thing in the past, the well-worn things that we've heard him go on and on about. Nancy Pelosi was the reason that January 6th got attacked, yada, yada. And every one of them just served to reaffirm the fact that the guy is old, out of it, and obsessed with his old grievances. And I will just say as a final point, to your point on humility, I have no idea. Like, you could come out of this and the polling's going to be exactly the same. Yeah. Or you could tell me that some group of swing voters are like, I don't know. I don't have the mind of a swing voter, obviously. I don't know. I'm humble on that. Yeah. What I saw was someone totally outmatched in every single way.
Can I just add, though?
No, you go.
I think that we have all been tough and critical of the press. ABC did a very fine job.
Yes,
they did
excellent.
reporting on the eating of pets,
Which is important. Like, you got to say it.
I mean,
Yes.
and I think sometimes people are reluctant to put themselves in a story. David Muir didn't hesitate to say, I went back and watched the tape. You didn't sound sarcastic to me when you said, I lost by a whisker. Kamala Harris got Trump on three sides of whether or not he won in 2020. He said, I won. And then he said, I said sarcastically that I lost by a whisker, and then David Muir ended it by saying, no, that wasn't sarcastic. So what the American people heard was Trump on three sides of the outcome of 2020. And David Muir and Lindsay Davis played an important role in that.
They were excellent. I think I kudos to them because they did just enough fact checking not to be to be a part of the debate, but to make sure that really egregious lies were shut down. The one thing I would add is theatrically, what Vice President Harris did that I thought was very smart was that when she was saying something about Donald Trump, particularly when she was talking about the way foreign governments that she has interacted with think about him, she looked at him.
Yes.
And he would not look at her.
He would not.
He would not
The whole
look at
time.
her. He stayed and he glowered into the camera. And that two-shot, I think, puts her at a stature so far above him. He looked weak and he looked afraid because he wouldn't look her in the eye. And she said, you are a disgrace. And I'm not saying I'm saying you're a disgrace. I'm saying that the people that I speak with that are heads of
military leaders who have worked with you.
Who worked with you.
Tell me that you
are a disgrace.
And in order to say you, she has to turn to him, and he can't bear it.
He can't bear it. And then he, in his own defense, he goes to Viktor Orban. And you could almost hear the entire audience laughing because you're like, you've got to be kidding. That's your defense, Viktor Orban. And his other good one was when he tried to explain how it was his idea to get out of Afghanistan, but it was a terrible idea. He says, well, he names like a random name of an Arabic name and says, well, that guy loves me. Yeah. Like he didn't have anyone that he could point to that was like a character witness.
Yeah. And on that note, when he was asked about when Kamala brought up the deal that he made with the Taliban, releasing the 5,000 people, and then he had a chance to respond to that. Oh my goodness, was that one of the worst responses to a question in debate history? You let how many go? 5,000 Taliban terrorists? And what was his response? It was, oh well, they had a deal and the Taliban needed to do this, and this. No specifics, right? Just this, and this, and they didn't do it. And it was like, that was like the 6th or 7th time where Donald Trump was asked a question, and he just totally diverted, right? Just kind of like swam away from it. Also, talking about how Kamala made eye contact with Donald and looked at him and said, "You're a disgrace. I've talked to military leaders, and you are a disgrace." She set that up by walking straight over to him and making sure that he knew that she was the big baller in the room when she shook his hand. I think that moment wasn't the smoothest of moments, but it meant a whole hell of a lot. Kamala kind of cementing her position on the debate stage.
He also invented a head of the Taliban named Abdul. Which is not the name of the head of the Taliban, just to be clear. He just randomly named him. Just one more thing, and then I know we have colleagues, whatever, but just on the abortion answer, which was to me was the worst moment in the first debate because Joe Biden got asked an abortion question and he just did not deliver the answer that, is right there. She destroyed him on the abortion answer. She talked about why we're here. She talked about the consequences in the real world of women bleeding out in a parking lot waiting to get care because they have a miscarriage that they cannot be treated, and 12-year-old survivors of incest. She completely destroyed him on it. She sort of gave him no territory to wiggle away from.
Okay, he's not bringing it back around to why those two people, the woman bleeding out, was so important in that question. Why the 12-year-old who was carrying her rapist child was so important in that question. Because Donald Trump is lying through his teeth when he says that all the Democrats wanted me to send abortion back to the states. Oh, they all wanted me to do that and to end Roe v. Wade. All the legal scholars. He says everyone wanted that. No, Donald. Not the woman bleeding out, not her husband who's terrified that he's going to lose not only their child, but his wife. Not the 12-year-old, not her mom, her brother, her sister, her aunt, her uncle, her grandmother, her grandfather. They don't want that. So who is everyone, Donald? And that's why that moment was so big. That's why Kamala Harris owned that moment about abortion.
And also, he refused to say he would veto a national ban.
Yes, and
which he could, and J.D. Vance said he could. He could have, and he didn't.
It's now 11 o'clock on the East Coast. You are watching our coverage of the second presidential debate, the first debate between Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump, which concluded just a few minutes ago in Philadelphia. I mean, Chris, to your point about news being made here, Trump refused to say that he would veto a national abortion ban. Trump also repeatedly refused to say that he thinks or thinks that it would be good or wants for Ukraine to win the war against Russia.
Yeah, given half a dozen opportunities.
Yes, he would not say it. And then he talks about how he's very concerned about the number of troops that Russia has lost after they invaded another sovereign country. I mean, it was stunning. Joy, to your point about the way that Kamala Harris turned it to him directly, I just want to read that part from the transcript. Kamala Harris says to the camera, Donald Trump was fired by 81 million people. So let's be clear about that. And clearly, he's having a very difficult time processing that. But we cannot afford to have a president of the United States who attempts, as he did in the past, to upend the will of the voters in a free and fair election. And I'm going to tell you that I have traveled the world as vice president. World leaders are laughing at Donald Trump. I mean, he cannot bear the idea of somebody laughing at him. World leaders are laughing at Donald Trump. I have talked with military leaders, some of whom work, and then she turns, with you. And they say, you're a disgrace. And when you then talk in this way in a presidential debate over and over again about court cases you've lost because you did, in fact, lose that election, it leads one to believe that perhaps we do not have in the candidate to my right the temperament or the ability to not be confused about that fact. And that's deeply troubling. And the American people deserve better. That is playing those two tracks that you're talking about, Chris, the camera talking to people at home and talking to her opponent in ways that deeply, deeply rattled him. And she's able to do it in the same answer. Joining us now, I'm honored to say, is the Democratic vice presidential nominee and Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. Governor Walz, I really appreciate you making time to be with us here tonight. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, Rachel. Great night. A great night.
You were at a watch party in Arizona. You think it was a great...
Yeah, before we get into Tim Walz, I know we're all really excited to hear from him, but don't you guys feel just so much better about the direction of our country after tonight? I do.
Great night. Tell us how you assess your running mate's performance this evening.
Yeah, I'm out here in Mesa, and folks across the country got to see a president for all Americans. You saw Kamala Harris conduct herself with dignity. She laid out a clear vision forward, one that's an opportunity economy we keep talking about, ability to own a home, making sure prescription drugs are not too expensive, and tackling the real problems and doing it all with grace and dignity. And then on the other side, look, I don't know how other to describe it. You saw a nearly 80-year-old angry narcissist continue to veer off into things that in any other setting might actually be funny, but they're dangerous in this setting. They're dangerous because this guy anywhere near the White House is simply unacceptable. But I think the good news is a lot of Americans are going to see this clip. These things are going to go around. They're going to talk to their neighbors, and they're going to see what Vice President Harris is bringing to them. She talks about them. He talks about himself. She talks about real issues. He goes on tangents that are hard to follow. So I have to tell you, I'm excited about this. It's what we all knew. I'm glad more people are engaging, and we've got an opportunity. All of this, doing it with joy. A politics of joy, a politics of possibilities versus this just increasingly dark. Look, what I say is, Rachel, this guy's rooting against America. He's rooting for failure. He does not want good news. He does not want good economic news. He does not want to see unemployment, inflation going down. He wants to see the worst because whatever twisted vision he has, he thinks he's the guy to fix it when he's the guy who started the problem. So she did a great job. I'm really proud of her.
You know, your running mate, Vice President Harris, one of the things that she was just getting praised for at this table here was that she, right out of the gate, was able to get to a lot of the details of her policy proposals, the kinds of practical proposals that you're talking about, things like child tax credit and a big tax deduction for startup businesses and for first-time homeowners. And she laid out those things, and those things, it's important, obviously, to communicate those things to the American people with such a big audience. Tens of millions of people are watching tonight. It wasn't necessarily news, though, because we know that's what she's running on. On the other side, the other candidate, former President Trump, did make a bunch of news tonight. He refused to say whether or not he would sign a national abortion ban. He refused to say that Ukraine should win the war in Russia, and that would be better. He was asked, 9 years after you first said you wanted to get rid of Obamacare, do you yet have your own health care plan? And he responded by saying, I have concepts of plans. I mean, all of this was, among other things, it was new information in terms of Donald Trump's plans. I wonder if that changes anything for you in terms of thinking about how to campaign against him and his running mate.
Americans should know. We know what a non-answer is when he's talking about this. Of course he would not sign a ban against that because he wants it. He's the one who ruined Roe. He brags about it all the time. Of course he's not going to do anything with Ukraine because he wants Putin, his buddy, to be in there, and he wants to undermine our alliances that have kept peace in the world. These non-answers are as clear as anything. He can't answer them. And again, when you ask him for a plan, 9 years on health care, we know what he's going to do. He's going to destroy the ACA, get rid of pre-existing condition protections. He's going to attack Social Security and Medicare. And the one thing I say, Rachel, is he is clear about he will give tax cuts to the wealthy because that's the one thing he actually followed through with. So he has no plan. When I travel, and we all see this, when I was at the D-Day memorial, it was clear that other countries, deeply concerned with Donald Trump coming back, deeply concerned that his inability to do anything other than a transactional shakedown of our historical allies, as we sat on the beaches of Normandy, where Americans died, protecting Europe, but protecting us. That's the thing. You give in on Ukraine, it empowers China, it empowers Putin, it empowers dictators. But again, one example, he was asked for one world leader who was with him, and it's Orban. My God, that's all you need to know. You've got a leader in Kamala Harris that understands the importance of these alliances. She understands what it truly means to stand up for the Western democracies, and she truly means to talk about others. Donald Trump talked about himself 99% of the time, and if he wasn't talking about that, he was talking about Orban. So it was couldn't have been clearer. Couldn't have been clearer. And I'd just like to say, if I can make my plug, she did her job. Americans need to do theirs. Get engaged. Get the facts. Go to KamalaHarris.com. Go down and do some door knocking. Talk to your neighbor. Talk to your relatives. It was clear tonight that there is only one person on that stage that should be president of the United States, and that was Kamala Harris.
One of the more interesting and I think unpredictable moments in the debate, Governor Walz, was a back and forth with the former president about whether or not he believes that he won or lost the last election. He has made some contrary remarks about this in recent days. He tried to claim, I think not very credibly, and was called out by one of the moderators, tried to claim that those recent comments were meant sarcastically, as if he had been joking. It really didn't seem at the moment like he was. The reason this isn't just about 2020, it's not just about 4 years ago, it's about now, is because presumably his attitude toward American elections carries through from the last one to this next one. And I have to ask if you and your campaign and Vice President Harris are fully expecting that even if you wipe the floor with him, even if you win by a lot in November, that he is going to enlist the entire Republican Party, both nationally and in every state that he can, in trying to claim falsely that he won.
Yeah, that's who this guy is. And let's be very clear. This is a threat to the democracy. It is the most treasonous thing you can do to undermine what was fair and free election. He's never had anybody support anything other than a pillow guy support his insane rhetoric around this. But look, this is dangerous. 140 police officers were hurt and some were killed. This has caused issues across this country. The campaign, we're ready for this. We know it's going to be a tough race. We know that he's not going to probably concede. That's why I say once again to Americans, get out there, get engaged, make sure that we're doing everything necessary. And I'm going to give give a huge thank you to those election workers, folks like my mom, who's been a poll watcher for years, folks that are on the Republican, Democrats, independents, who do the hard work of democracy for no money. They're being put at risk by the recklessness of Donald Trump, because he can't, at nearly 80 years old, do something that my fourth graders, when I taught them, did. When you lose a game, you go shake hands and you congratulate the other person and you move on. We're in this together. This guy cares nothing about the democracy. He cares nothing about the American people. He cares about himself and himself only. So again, I appreciate the moderators calling him out on this, re-questioning him on it, making it clear that he's not lost. But look, this guy is a threat. This is going to be a close election. We know it comes down to the battleground states. So for all the listeners out there, we need you. We need you to get engaged. We need you to send a message to this. And I just came a few minutes ago from talking with Mesa Mayor Giles, a Republican, who says, I'm a strong Republican. I don't agree with all of your positions, but you are standing in the breach of democracy. Donald Trump is a threat to that, and he proudly stood there with he and his family. That's the type of things we need Americans to do across this country. Kamala Harris is going to be that president for all of us. You don't have to agree with every policy, but it's very clear. She trusts this democracy. She puts the Constitution above everything else. He doesn't. I'm going to get the opportunity to have a debate with someone who's on the stage, because Mike Pence sure isn't, because he was willing to put the Constitution above Donald Trump. So we get to continue this conversation over the next 56 days, but it's absolutely critical people know what the threat is.
Governor Walz, I want to ask you about your prep for that debate with J.D. Vance coming up. But while we have been talking, somebody's just handed me something, and I'm going to do sort of a not very TV thing, and I'm going to read it to you in totality. I'm going to read you the whole thing, because this was, I don't think you know about this, but this was just posted online by a woman you might have heard of whose name is Taylor Swift. And she has posted this online along with a photo of her cat. And I'm going to read to you what she just posted. Quote, like many of you, I watched the debate tonight. If you haven't already, now is a great time to do your research on the issues at hand and the stances these candidates take on the topics that matter to you the most. As a voter, I make sure to watch and read everything I can about their proposed policies and plans for this country. Recently, I was made aware that AI of me, quote me, falsely endorsing Donald Trump's presidential run was posted to his site. It really conjured up my fears around AI and the dangers of spreading misinformation. It brought me to the conclusion that I need to be very transparent about my actual plans for this election as a voter. The simplest way to combat misinformation is with the truth. Then she says, quote, I will be casting my vote for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz in the 2024 presidential election. I'm voting for Kamala Harris because she fights for the rights and causes I believe need a warrior to champion them. I think she is a steady-handed, gifted leader, and I believe we can accomplish so much more in this country if we're led by calm and not chaos. I was so heartened and impressed by her selection of running mate Tim Walz, who has been standing up for LGBTQ plus rights, IVF, and a woman's right to her own body for decades. I've done my research, and I've made my choice. Your research is all yours to do, and the choice is yours to make. I also want to say, especially to first-time voters, remember that in order to vote, you have to be registered. I also find it's much easier to vote early. I will link where to register and find early voting dates and info in my story. With love and hope, Taylor Swift, signed Childless Cat Lady.
Has entered the building.
I have to get your response to that, Mr. Governor.
All those things, I am incredibly grateful, first of all, to Taylor Swift. I say that also as a cat owner, a fellow cat owner. Look, Swifties, you heard it. We know that it's there. That was eloquent, and it was clear. And that's the type of courage we need in America to stand up. We've seen it out of those Republicans who were at the DNC. We've seen it out of women who would like to have their own personal lives kept personal, but are forced to go out there because they nearly died because they can't get abortion services in a pregnancy. And now you have somebody like Taylor Swift coming out, making that very clear. This would be the opportunity, Swifties. KamalaHarris.com. Get on over there. Give us a hand. Get things going.
Governor Walz, you do have your own debate with J.D. Vance that is coming up and coming up quickly. Have you started prepping for that yet, or do you have thoughts already about how you're going to approach that?
Yeah, I need to. Look, he's Yale law guy. I'm public school teacher, so we know where he's at on that. Sure, I think it's a good opportunity to contrast where we're at. You'll hear me talk like I have about things that impact Americans, making sure they have the opportunity to thrive, making sure that we're being factual in how we talk about that. And so I'm looking forward to it. I'll work hard. That's what I do. I fully expect that Senator Vance, as a United States Senator, a Yale law guy, he'll come well prepared. But I think what you saw tonight is the American public is on the side of truth. The American public is on the side of things that impact their lives in a positive way. And I'll continue to put that out and continue to lift up this incredible vision that Kamala Harris brought out tonight, this incredible just change in our politics to be joyful, hopeful. And look, she did what it is. We can be joyful, but don't mistake her kindness for weakness, because she called that out. And I said, I did enough lunchroom supervision. You put bullies in their place, and she put a bully in his place all night. And right before our eyes, Donald Trump got angrier and smaller and more irrelevant. We need to keep pressure on for 56 days and win this thing.
Yeah, I cannot wait to hear Tim Walz tell J.D. Vance to mind his own damn business face to face. That debate is going to be something else.
We don't know yet what the voters will think of tonight's debate. We don't even know yet how many people have tuned in and watched it. The immediate reaction from the political observers who I serve with here at MSNBC was that your running mate, Vice President Harris, essentially wiped the floor with Donald Trump tonight. Joy Reid said the word that she chose was destroyed. Chris Hayes and Lawrence O'Donnell had an interesting colloquy between them as to whether or not this might have been the best televised presidential debate performance ever, not just against Donald Trump, but in any presidential debate. And so, again, we don't know how viewers at large will view it, but I think at least here, our tiny, weird focus group thinks that she did very well. Given that, it doesn't necessarily lend itself toward an obvious next choice. You could just leave it at this and decide that that was a pretty good way to leave yourself in the minds of voters before they head into the voting booth, or you could agree to another debate. I mean, if Donald Trump agreed to do it, do you think that Vice President Harris should debate him again after tonight?
Look, I don't want to speak for her, but I would be there encouraging her to do it every day if she could. We know there's going to be nothing new. It's the same old tired agenda that he brings every time, and she's bringing this new hopefulness, this ability to be able to articulate what Americans are asking for. The agenda that he brings up, no one's asking for that. He can, in his mind, 99% of people, or whatever that is, it's him and whoever else is in his head. Those are the people that are thinking that way. So, look, she'll make that decision. We agreed to these two debates. We will carry them out. We'll see where it goes. But again, I would just encourage Americans, don't believe this thing's over by any stretch. This thing is going to be a margin of error race. We know that it'll be close. We know that there will be attempts to try and discourage people from voting. But Taylor Swift's right. Get registered early, get engaged, and, voting's at the entry point. Maybe make a few phone calls, do a door knock. If you can, contribute. Those are the things that help us take this message to every corner of the country.
Democratic vice presidential nominee, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. Sir, I know a lot of pressure on your schedule tonight. Thank you so much for spending some of it here with us.
Thanks, Rachel.
All right.
Oh, that was really cool. Okay, so Kamala she just destroyed Donald Trump. And then I would probably argue that Taylor Swift is more famous than Kamala Harris. I don't know, maybe like right then and there. Kamala then comes out not even an hour after the debate finishes and issues a multi-paragraph statement, not only slamming Donald Trump for using AI-generated images to falsely claim that that Taylor Swift was supporting Trump, but she makes it very clear that she's voting for Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. Oh, if the debate performance wasn't terrible news for Donald Trump, having Taylor Swift not only say that I'm voting for your opponent, but that you creep, tried to lie about me, the most famous person in the world, and pretend like I was endorsing you? Oh, it just keeps getting sweeter and sweeter watching Donald Trump just swirl around this drain. Okay, so I want to go over to Fox News, and I want to see how they're handling this, because it's got to be pretty bad. It's got to be pretty bad. Let's see what I've seen a couple of people using the term sane washing. Let's see how they're continuing to brainwash their viewers into thinking that Donald Trump cares about them. All right, let's see here.
But we have a lot of work to do, okay? And tonight, I think, highlighted for the American people what's at stake. I started the debate by talking
nice.
about
Okay.
it, and it became apparent, I think, throughout that about an hour and a half, that...
Let's see this.
Back.
Let's see if
They were sent after the war in Iraq, the biggest foreign policy debacle in American
Get out of
history.
here, man. Get out
And
of
they're
here.
not endorsing.
Good. They cut away from these two buffoons to bring us Kamala.
Vice President.
Talk about democracy. They will
Most of the people. And about
Come on. All right, here we go.
points of view to hear dissent. In my case, of course, they got rid of the primaries. They literally abolished many of the primaries so that President Biden wouldn't have to debate me, wouldn't have to run against me.
Let me dip in. I guess Kamala's at one of her watch parties or something. I don't know what she's saying. Let's just dip in for a second.
Oh my God. Sean Hannity sounds so depressed. Oh, I love it.
Let me just say that I think we all know that tonight was a night that highlights something that you all have been working so hard on. We have folks here who have been knocking on doors. Well, you know. But we have a lot of work to do, okay? And tonight, I think, highlighted for the American people what's at stake. I started the debate by talking about it, and it became apparent, I think, throughout that about an hour and a half, that...
So look, obviously she's going to go out there and her team. The thing that I learned about her tonight is, being hidden away for days and days and days on end.
If they're not going to broadcast that speech, then let's see if we can find it somewhere else here. Maybe CNN. CNN's got to have this, or MSNBC. Where are they? Oh, bringing on the big guns. The guy who couldn't get 1% of the vote, RFK Jr. to break down Kamala's debate performance. Classic Sean Hannity. Here we go. All right. I'm just going to bring us back to the start here. I think I also want to hear if they broadcast it. I want to hear Doug Emhoff's introduction for her.
About, what Donald Trump has been saying and what her reaction to that is. So I was really struck by the kind of the welcoming, sort of involved nature of her responses.
I got my flu vaccine today, my COVID booster.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. We're just going to go to Kamala Harris.
Just remember to
live
get your
folks
flu
here
vaccine.
who've been knocking on doors. Well, you know. But we have a lot of work to do, okay? And tonight, I think, highlighted for the American people what's at stake. I started the debate by talking about it, and it became apparent, I think, throughout that about an hour and a half, that... Look, this is very much two different visions for our country. Ours, which is a vision for the future, and his, which is about the past and taking us backward. And as I said on the debate stage, we are not going back. We are not going back. And so we know what we're fighting for. We know what we stand for. And that's why we know what we're fighting for. We're fighting for the dignity of all people. We're fighting for the dignity of work. We are fighting for middle-class families. We are fighting to uplift people, understanding the true measure of the strength of a leader is not based on who you beat down, it's based on who you lift up. That's what we stand for. And so we've got some work to do because, listen, I think that we think today was a good day, and it kind of was. But we have 56 days to go, and guys, we're still the underdogs in this race. It's tight. We have got to win Pennsylvania, and we are going
going to win Pennsylvania. And it is because of you. It is because of you who have signed up, who have volunteered. You are organizing. You're helping us to email and text and knock on doors and talk to your neighbors and your friends. And here's the thing about the spirit of our campaign. It is people-driven. It is about the people. It is about uplifting our country. This is a campaign born out of love of country. We love our country. We believe in who we are. We believe in the American people. This is a campaign about bringing folks together, knowing the vast majority of us have so much more in common than what separates us. It is about inclusion, and it is not about division, and it is not about demeaning and name-calling. It is about lifting folks up, working folks, families, children, people who are just not just trying to get by, but trying to get ahead. That's what we stand for. So let's get out here for these next 56 days. Hard work is good work, and we will win. We will win. See you later.
Vice President Kamala Harris and the second gentleman, her husband, Doug Emhoff, speaking to a watch party tonight in Philadelphia, just after the conclusion of tonight's sort of blockbuster presidential debate. They're playing Taylor Swift right now, and that maybe they'd be doing it anyway, but Taylor Swift just issued her mega celebrity endorsement of the Harris-Walz campaign with a post on Instagram that, as Joy pointed out, had instantly a million likes and counting. Perhaps the most anticipated and potentially most consequential presidential celebrity campaign endorsement that we've seen.
Oy.
And I don't know how long. I don't even know. I don't even know what to compare it to.
MSNBC is kind of focusing on Taylor
Can we
Swift.
go back
it is big news. It is massive.
Our friends Claire and Alex, who are in Philadelphia in the spill room. Claire, we so rudely ripped the camera away from you because we wanted to get Vice President Harris in her live remarks at that watch party. But I need to hear more from you about what you thought about her performance tonight and how this went.
In the chat, Kamala crushed it.
Well, listen. His premise of the debate was she's not
just
strong enough to negotiate with people or to go toe-to-toe with people. And what
a great night for decency, a great night for normalcy, a great night for democracy, a great night for peace, a great night for all of us here on Reflect, a great night for America, a great night for the world. And I just want to say thank you all. Thank you all so much for all of your great comments and tuning in and watching it. Welcome to the new subscribers. If you haven't subscribed, be sure to hit that button. Consider becoming a member. That helps the channel out. But most importantly, just tune in and let us hear your reflections, because the bigger this community grows, the stronger we all become. Thank you again. I have no idea when the next live stream will be. Maybe tomorrow. I'm considering doing a lot more live streams, just kind of covering politics and just the daily political grind with this election. And I'd love to do it with all of you. So tune back in. And in the meantime, till the next video, have a damn good night and a damn good day. The sun is going to shine a little bit brighter tomorrow. Thanks again, everyone. Have a great